Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei got married with mother of Leviathan Ingvild Part 2. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the DanzyDanz for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Let's start this video. In a time long past, the name Mickey Hayato meant nothing. In the depths of hell, once a fractured realm known as the underworld, chaos reigned supreme. Devils, fallen angels, demons, and grim reapers of Hades clashed relentlessly, each vying for dominion over a land torn asunder. Victory was a fleeting dream, for every triumph came at a price measured in blood and suffering. The eternal cycle of warfare saw the weakened factions form uneasy alliances, only to turn on each other once more when opportunity knocked. But then, a tempest brewed within the heart of a demon, a tempest that would grow into the mightiest cyclone hell had ever witnessed. This demon would ignite a rebellion of unprecedented scale, a rebellion that united all who had grown weary of their leaders' ineptitude, who had suffered the loss of loved ones due to their rulers' incompetence. Once, the kingdom of demons was tainted by corrupt officials who bled their subjects dry for personal gain. Those same streets now ran red with the blood of the corrupt nobles and their wretched kin. With an iron will, this demon seized the throne of the demon kingdom, marking her rise by severing the head of the false king and displaying it for all to see. The demon queen had arrived, and her ascension had just begun. To end the cycle of vengeance, one must ensure no one remains to carry the torch of retribution. The former rulers lacked this wisdom, but not the dread Empress. Under her relentless rule, the demon's once disposable army underwent a transformation that took 5 years to complete. The gates swung open to all who dared to join, no longer reserved for brain-dead orcs and feeble goblins. The Empress would not have her forces composed of buttery soft soldiers. Vampires, dragons, drows, devils, high and low-born demons, grim reapers who had grown weary of Hades' passiveness, and fallen angels who had seen through the warmongering facades of Kokobil. Even notorious criminals hunted by all of hell found themselves pressed into service. It was not a welcome embrace, but a ruthless coercion, a harsh training, and a relentless indoctrination until their loyalty belonged to one and one alone, the Dread Empress. For the first Dread Empress was nothing if not fair. She dealt terror and oppression to all in equal measure, not favoring any particular group that might rise in rebellion. Yet, she was merciful too, offering chances to those who stumbled and opportunities to those who were weak until they could shatter mountains with their fists and exude unshakable confidence. Anyone that wasn't brave enough was drilled and schooled until they developed a healthy self-confidence, and joined the ranks of the Empress' loyal legion. One sin. One truth. One sin that is defeat, and one truth that is victory. A mantra that resounded like thunder through the dark corridors of hell. An anthem of aspiration for the angsty souls among demons and devils who yearned to ascend to the throne as the next dread emperor. It was a maxim that had been etched into the very annals of hell's history, a creed born in the fires of ambition. The guardians of this code were the infernal sentinels, an elite force plucked from the very heart of the Legion of Terror. Chosen through trials of both body and mind, they were the Dread Empress's personal shield, her vanguard in battle, and her counsel in imperial matters. To be chosen as an infernal sentinel was the highest honor an unnatural being could ever hope to attain, and to date, only 3 had been deemed worthy. Among their ranks stood the Crimson Satan, a name that struck terror into the hearts of even the bravest souls, a notorious evil dragon known as the Crescent Circle Dragon. His very presence heralded destruction. And the third, the demon lord of lust, whose seductive charm was as deadly as her blade. One sin. One truth. The battle cry of their reforms. A chilling chorus that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. It was a scar that branded those who crossed paths with them in the desolate wastelands or any independent cities that had refused to give up their autonomous rule. Once, the Dread Empress orchestrated the fall of the fallen angels with cunning diplomacy veiled in treachery. A peace meeting with their leaders became a merciless trap, a joint venture with a sensible governor who shared her vision of peace. Warmongering psychopaths, and those who threatened to disrupt the newfound harmony were cast into pits of molten lava or offered as sacrifices to the Chaos Dragons. The remaining leaders of the fallen angels were made into mere puppets, and Grigori became an extension of her will. Once, she destroyed Hades' armies by simply coercing their unsatisfied Grim Reapers through her more satisfied Grim Reapers, turning the entire realm of the dead against him. His bony skull was widely known as a nice decoration to her mantle that was crafted from the skin scales of an evil dragon who decided it was a smart idea to try to gobble this Dread Empress. She forgot who it was. The Diabolism Thousand Dragon or something apparently was his nickname. She thought Mantle of the Dread Empress was more fitting. The Dread Empress was a force of unrelenting ruthlessness, and she harbored no patience for those who dared oppose her, considering them deserving of nothing less than death. Once she brought the falsely titled Empire of Devils to its knees with a nationwide inferno, flames that roared forth from her chaos dragons, while she herself kept the so-called original Satan's descendants at bay, preventing them from aiding their people in the face of death. The agonized screams of the devil's subjects served as a brutal weapon, battering the resolve of those who sought to resist her rule. Once the devils were subdued, she appointed her own capable devil to ensure unwavering loyalty. Once, she sent a mere raven to the pearly gates of the kingdom of heaven, a simple messenger bearing a letter that sent shivers through the celestial realm. Nobody knew the contents of that letter for certain, but thereafter, the kingdom of heaven ceased all attempts to establish contact with her for decades. Conspiracy theories and wild rumors swirled in her wake. Some speculated she had plucked a seraph's golden feather to use as her quill pen. Others believed she was Trihexa in the guise of a demon. Popular opinions credited her with the titles of the Scourge of Hell, Terror of Death since she was the one who lopped off Hades' head, or the Bane of Evil since her army massacred all evil dragons who just wanted to be evil because they were evil dragons. But rumors held no sway over the dread Empress. She cared not for silly baseless tales or irrelevant nicknames. Her focus was solely on the stability of her realm. The dread Empress adhered to one principle and one principle alone. Those who refused to kneel before her would find their knees broken until submission was their only option. She addressed any threat, no matter how small, with swift and brutal efficiency. Spies from other realms met gruesome fates, cast into fiery lava, poisonous swamps, bottomless pits, jagged spikes, hell crocodile dens, or the jaws of rabid chihuahuas. The dread Empress's personal favorite was the pit of rotating blades, aptly named the Blender. Rebellions were quashed without mercy. Half-brained devils with dreams of evil were either gifted to heaven for a goodwill gesture, or set ablaze in public as a dire warning. Anyone who dared to defy her or destabilize the realm because of their thoughtless dreams were peacefully sent to the afterlife through extra-violent means. She enjoyed having a diverse range of options, ensuring that if anyone managed to survive one pit, there was always another that would not fail. And if all else failed, she was not above getting her own hands dirty. But all good things must come to an end. At least that was what she hoped for. Suffering from her own success, the dread Empress grew weary of ruling an empire without adversaries to crush or enemies to trample into dust. She felt her spirit withering within from dealing with trivial matters such as heroes who believed slaying her would save humanity, the eternal milk feud between her pet Cerberus, and receiving messengers from the kingdom of heaven seeking discussions about the mysterious letter she had sent. She ensured that heaven would think twice before sending another messenger, as she kicked the hapless envoy back to the celestial realm without her wings. Then, one day, the unthinkable happened. The dread Empress was found dead in her chamber, her body reduced to ashes, never to be seen again. Her subjects rightly feared her, but they also mourned the loss of the greatest tyrant Hell had ever known. The Scourge of Hell would be remembered and missed for decades to come as the Empire of Hell met an unforeseen end. Once again, Hell was shattered. Fortunately, capable leaders rose to the occasion, ensuring that Hell did not descend into turmoil once more. The tale of their deeds would be recounted another day because the dread Empress had chosen to fake her death. Why? Because she had decided to pursue the one thing she had yet to experience during her ruthless reign, love, and she had encountered a ridiculous chemical reaction that compelled her to create babies with the man now sitting before her, enjoying a pancake breakfast and scratching his stubble as he regarded her with curiosity. "Something on your mind, Mickey?" he inquired. "Nothing but you, my dear," she replied. Now you're going to make me blush here." Nobody would have expected the dread Empress to assume the appearance of a tranquil Japanese woman in her early 30s and take the name Yoshikawa Miki, all for the sake of love. But who cared? She certainly didn't. She had found her contentment here, simply watching him savor gluten-free food in his quirky Hawaiian shirt. No kings or queens crushed under her heel could ever evoke the same happiness as being by his side. "What's on your mind, husband?" she asked with a teasing voice, hoping to hear her name. Issei, at the moment. She pouted almost immediately. "Yeesh, we finally get our alone time on this private island, just you, me, and a few insignificant attendants, and you're thinking about the brat? Mickey." Gora's smile was as warm as ever, a reminder of the tenderness that had first drawn her to him. Her heart still raced when he took her hand. "Kun! Take me, please!" she playfully pleaded. He chuckled, accustomed to her playful antics. "Aren't you worried too? He's there on his own. I am not well informed when it comes to that side of the world, your side of the world. How can I not be worried?" "Oh, you're so considerate, Goro. Gora's grip on her hand eased as he peered into her energetic brown eyes. She had been a cruel tyrant, but she was also his wife and the mother of their son. Lost in that gaze for a few moments, Mickey eventually let out a deflating sigh. He's going to be fine. He's my son. I've taught him the skills he needs to survive in that world. Besides, he's a shrewd little boy. Which sometimes grinds my gears. Gora considered her words but still appeared uneasy. I understand what you're saying. Even so, I can't help but worry about our son. I'm sorry, Mickey. I know how much you want us to have some time just for ourselves, but it seems I can't stop worrying about him, especially with all those races that might try to manipulate him. She crossed her hands and let out a huff. Humph. If he's my son, then he's the one doing the manipulating, which I am strangely confident he would. Curiously enough, Gora chuckled briefly, his gaze fixed on the rolling ocean waves before them. It's strange not having him around, even though he mostly kept to his room. Ah ha ha ha. Ha. I suppose these things happen to all parents eventually. You're really worried about him, aren't you? Mickey said softly. Maybe it's just my age, he mused, his tone somewhat melancholic. You, on the other hand, look as youthful as ever, Mickey. Mickey's cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but beneath that, she felt a pang of sadness. She had conquered realms and crushed her enemies, but time had a way of reminding her that even the most powerful tyrants couldn't escape the passage of years. Yes, she knew. Human lifespans were shorter than those of demons. That was one of the conditions she had accepted when she married this man. The knowledge that he would continue to age while she remained youthful was one of the reasons she yearned to spend more time with him. I could give you a longer life, you know, she whispered, hopefully. Disgustingly fragile and vulnerable, yet she had been blinded by her love for him. Gora chuckled warmly, gently enveloping her hand with his. You and our boy deserve all the happiness in the world. I fear these old bones can only give so much. Mickey's eyes began to glisten with unshed tears. No. Stop it. You're going to make me cry. It's a reality you must come to terms with, honey. Gora shifted his deck chair closer to hers, then pulled her head onto his shoulder. But worry not. I still have a good 30 years or so to make you the happiest I can. To dedicate most of my life to you has been a gift in itself. Yuck, Gora! Mickey clung onto him, her face nuzzling against his chest that had lost some of its robustness over the years but still radiated warmth, accompanied by the same familiar vibrations as he chuckled. Her esteemed moment of romance was shattered when she sensed a demon in the vicinity. A demon that didn't belong to her. She knew, she had marked all of those who worked for her on this island with a simple spell. With a frustrated look on her face, as she tore herself away from her husband's embrace, Mickey stepped out from under the umbrella that had been shading them. She began her transformation, embracing her demonic form, as she looked directly at the sun and the silhouette blocking its blinding glow. Mickey? Gora peered from his seat, once again witnessing the formidable transformation of his wife as she reverted to her true self, the feared dread Empress Isabel Archuleta, the first of her name. Her brown hair turned as white as snow. Her hands elongated into claws reminiscent of a chaos dragon, equally as scaly and equally as deadly. A bristly black carapace sprouted on her chest, shielding her torso and shoulders, extending all the way up to her neck like a second skin. Black scales emerged on her cheeks, crawling onto the bottom of her eyes as her sclera turned ink black and her pupils glowed ominously golden. 4 black horns sprouted from behind her ears, 2 on each side, their length matching that of her face. A serpent-like tail emerged from her back, slithering in the soft, warm sand, ready to aid her in maintaining her balance, or squeezing the life out of the intruding demon. The unwelcome visitor was about to learn a harsh lesson, that even on a romantic getaway, the dread Empress was never truly off-duty. She let out a smile as she relished the sensation of returning to this destructive form she hadn't needed to use in so long. Allowing her demonic strength to flow through her veins felt like a breath of fresh air. Still, being forced to use it during her honeymoon did not amuse her in the least, and this intruding demon must pay with their life. Where devils had bat-like wings and fallen angels possessed ravens' wings, ordinary demons had none. But for the unordinary that did, their wings were made of black jagged crystals that erupted from their backs, more suited for defense and attack than for mere flight due to their rock-solid sturdiness and sharpness that could cut gemstones. 6 wings unfurled, and without wasting a second after completing her demonification, she turned to face the stray demon, launching knife-sized crystals from her wings. The demon twisted in midair, somersaulting away from the array of razor-sharp projectiles, and then delivered a powerful downward kick toward the retired dread Empress. Luna fall! The force behind the kick could have easily split boulders, it would have splintered her skull in an instant, but the Dread Empress was far sturdier than any rock and her head even more so. The blow only served to irritate her rather than harm her. As the demon bounded away from her, striking her face with another kick, Mickey Hiatus simply stared at her aggressor with a disgusted look and an upset scowl. She appeared more disgruntled about the interruption of her holiday than the fact that she had just been kicked repeatedly in the head and face. Really? Calling out your attacks? Are you a demon or a hero? Mickey grumbled as she studied the intruder. It didn't take long for her to notice the long white leporine ears peeking out from the sides of her long white hair, a stark contrast to her dark skin and well-developed muscles of her arms and thighs. Mickey observed the unusual get-up of the demon with a raised eyebrow. Demons typically didn't wear white leotards. However, thigh-high boots were not out of the ordinary in the demon world, and she had donned similar attire herself for certain cultural occasions. Mickey shook away the thought that Issei might have had some fascination with this demon's peculiar outfit. The boy did have a penchant for odd things. The hell's a loose rabbit doing here? Mickey scoffed, her impatience evident. Back off to hell, you grunt. You don't remember me? The demon rabbit girl tilted her head, narrowing her shark-like eyes. She wore a challenging grin on her face. You destroyed my village, and you don't remember who I am? Mickey wrinkled her nose in annoyance. Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down? Course it doesn't. Not important anyway, since The demon girl was about to launch another attack, but before she could move, the Dread Empress had closed the 10-meter distance in the blink of an eye. It's a thing of the past. Let it go, Mickey scoffed, her claws piercing the demon's stomach, ripping through flesh and muscle, exposing internal organs, and letting a curtain of blood cascade over the open wounds. The demon's eyes twitched from the sudden surge of pain that registered. You murdered Mickey responded to the demon's accusations with a carefree, deadpan tone. Yes. I killed your parents and kids and possibly your entire family and people. Oh, the tragedy, the pain. You're not the first to try and kill me, Missy, but likely the most insipid. Now die at your earliest convenience. You kidding me? I'm just warming up. But the demon wasn't ready to give up. Instead of slumping down, she delivered an uppercut to the Empress's scaled jaw, crashing her steel-plated fist into the Empress's chin. Staring at the clear blue skies spotless from clouds, thinking it was such a beautiful day to spend admiring her husband, Mickey realized she didn't have time for this. You've gotten tired of living, haven't you? Mickey's voice was laced with barely contained fury, as she slowly turned her gaze back toward the demon. The demon's response was a spinning kick aimed at her neck. However, Mickey remained unflinching, feeling no pain, just a growing sense of annoyance at this disturbance. Please, do keep digging your own grave, Mickey warned, her anger becoming more apparent in her expression. I look forward to your splendidly inevitable demise. Right back at ya. The leporine-featured demon leaped high into the air, likely intending to use her move against Mickey once again. However, Mickey deemed it unnecessary and joined her in midair, creating a crater in the sand where she had stood. Mickey's jagged horns thrust themselves mercilessly into the demon's stomach, shattering her guard. Crimson blood sprayed into the air as Mickey halted her flight, leaving the demon flung further away, helpless in the face of her impending doom. Mickey's jaw unhinged with a bone-chilling creak, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth as she prepared her devastating breath attack. A malevolent orb of energy crackled and swirled before her gaping maw, a torrent of golden and black demonic power coalescing into a sinister beam that scorched the very air it traversed. The atmosphere itself quivered in fear as the dreadful energy surged toward the wounded demon. Clutching her blood-soaked abdomen, the demon could do little more than shift her body slightly. However, her left arm from the elbow down was obliterated, reduced to a gruesome ruin of flesh, bone, and gore by the Dread Empress's relentless onslaught. Despite the agony, the demon's grin only widened, a twisted expression of eagerness amid the agony. Mickey marveled briefly at the delight her adversary seemed to take in the brutality of their confrontation, but she had no time to dwell on it. Her eyes blazed with fury as she closed the distance once more, leaving behind a blur of black afterimages. With a savage roar, Mickey brought her right leg crashing down in a brutal downward kick. The demon managed to form a feeble guard with her remaining arm, but it was utterly insufficient against the sheer ferocity of the blow. The force sent her hurtling downward, her very bones rattling from the impact, and gouged a glob of blood as her spine crashed against an inconveniently placed rock, shattering it apart from the impact. Rolling to the side just in time, she narrowly avoided the Empress's talons striking the crater she left, averted from the disastrous fate of having her face crushed under the Empress's relentless assault. Wasting no time, the demon embedded her feet into the sand, propelling herself back at the Empress with a fearless glint in her eyes. The Empress remained still as the demon locked her thighs around the Empress's scaled neck, twisting her body upward and yelling, "Luna!" However, the demon's attempt at retaliation was cruelly halted as a minuscule yet malevolent black beam pierced her chest, impaling her left lung and rendering her unable to voice her defiance. Only a torrent of crimson blood flowed from her trembling lips, but she pressed on with her move. Gripping the Empress's neck with her thighs, the demon mustered every ounce of her strength to rip the tyrannical Empress from her perch. But it was futile. The Empress's mass, in her true form, equaled that of a chaos dragon, and the demon's efforts merely scratched the surface of her overwhelming power. Realization struck the demon too late as the Empress's claws easily embedded into her thigh's flesh and solid muscle. With a violent and effortless motion, the Empress violently tore the demon from her shoulders and hurled her into another rock. Despite the agony and injuries, the demon managed to spin in the air, recovering herself by using the rock as a makeshift springboard to rebound back toward the Empress. Mickey turned around with astonishing speed, delivering a devastating swat with her tail that sent the demon tumbling across the sand. The ground bore witness to the trails of red left behind as the demon dug her right hand into the soft surface, desperately trying to halt her skid. Still standing, the dread Empress muttered as she observed the stubborn demon getting back up, her legs trembling, and her willpower waning. Not an unusual case, however, since those heroes seemed to enjoy torturing themselves to fight an unwinnable fight. Given that the demon had launched herself at the Empress, Mickey decided it was only fair to return the favor and make things even. Her Mach-speed movements were too swift for the demon's eyes as her claws found purchase on the demon's face, smearing her dark skin with her own blood from their earlier encounter. Mickey's grip on the demon's skull eased, slowly and excruciatingly crushing bone and sinew beneath her merciless claws. The demon's right hand flailed in desperation, futilely attempting to pry away the Empress's vice-like hold, while her legs thrashed violently, battering against the Empress's torso and inflicting further pain upon herself. Aga! The demon's agonized cry pierced the air as her strength waned, her golden pupils locked in a merciless duel with the Empress's baleful golden gaze. "Lost for words, aren't you?" Mickey taunted, her cruel smile hidden behind her demonic visage. "Don't worry. You'll soon rejoin your dead friends, since they're already dead, and you're about to join them, in case your rabbit brain couldn't comprehend the implied undertone from my words. Hey, I am just warming up." "Well, aren't you a rockhead?" the dread Empress mused, her tone dripping with disdain. Unfortunately for the demon, Mickey had a history of crushing rocks when she had nothing better to do, either that or tapping her fingernails on her throne while awaiting another imperial threatening matter to resolve. The demon's grin finally wavered, transforming into an agonized scream as her strength rapidly dwindled under the relentless pressure of the Empress's grip. Bone cracked and blood oozed from the corners of the demon's eyes. "As much as I am obliged to snuff your life away," Mickey hissed, her voice a sinister whisper, "I would appreciate it if you tell me which merry band of idiots sent you here. Otherwise, I might have to resort to plucking off your fingernails, one by one, since that's a quick way to make someone talk." The demon's response was raspy and defiant. "I'm just here, for you." "Ah, a lone idiot then," the dread Empress remarked with a cruel smirk, relishing the lack of complications. "So, you came here seeking revenge because you think I murdered your people? Well, sweetheart, let me enlighten you. They were their own murderers, for if they were crushed by me, it simply means they lacked the intellect to wisely kneel before me. In order to make amends for their imprudent behavior," she continued, her voice dripping with sadistic amusement, "I'd say it's only fitting for you to kneel in their memory. What say you, Bunny?" The demon spat a mixture of blood and defiance onto the Empress's cheek, which would have landed if Mickey didn't tilt her head. She simply scowled in response to the attempted act of defiant face spitting. "Obstinate little miscreant," Mickey muttered, her patience wearing thin. "You should count yourself fortunate that I couldn't access my pit of demon-eating tapers without causing utter chaos in hell." "Mickey," her husband's voice called out gently. "Yes, my dear." The Empress's tone shifted instantly, and she skipped back to her husband, adopting a playful demeanor. "I'm sorry, but I had to attend to our uninvited guest," said guest who immediately sunk to the sand, now in a pitiful state, her breathing ragged and labored. Her torn outfit revealed her scarred back, marred with cuts and bruises. She lay there, unable to move, and her regenerative abilities, a common trait among demonkin, refused to work. It was the effect of the dread Empress's curse. Any wound she inflicted wouldn't heal instantly for the next 4 hours, unless Mickey herself chose to lift the curse. "Kaya, don't look!" Mickey squealed in embarrassment, as she realized she was still in her frenzied form. She quickly covered herself with her scaled hands, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "Avert your unblemished eyes, my dear, avert them away from this monstrous visage I've become." Gora didn't play along this time, and instead sighed. This wasn't exactly the first time he saw her going out of control either. You know I've never thought of you as the monster you think you are, Gora said, placing a comforting hand on her head, right between her black horns, nestling above her silk white hair. But I think you've gone far enough this time, honey. Mickey pouted, her earlier giddiness giving way to a sullen expression. But she attacked first. Made me waste precisely 2% of my power, she half-bragged, still clinging to her pride. And all those who attacked me are brain-dead beings undeserving of a quick, painless, untortured death. Isabel. Mickey's eyes sparkled with adoration as Gora called her by her real name. She loved it when he got assertive. Yeesish? She replied, her voice filled with playful affection. She couldn't resist the charm of his gentle authority. Gora sighed and cast a glance at the wounded demon girl still writhing on the sandy battlefield. Then, he returned his gaze to his love-struck wife. I understand that, he began, his tone laced with reason, and I do understand why you must go to such lengths. But I think you've shown her enough. No, you've almost never spared anyone, and that's understandable during your past. But we're here now. You and I. We wouldn't want a homicide tarnishing our memory of being here, would we, dear? HNNG. I love it when you get all bossy with me with your moral qualms. Do it more, would you? Mickey grinned dreamily, unaware that this kind of stupid smile had been passed on to her son during his days as an open pervert whenever he saw a girl's bear. Gora maintained his flat smile and expression, unwilling to play along with her flirtation. His focus remained on the injured demon. Humph, alright, fine. No dead demons today, Mickey conceded, her mood swinging from sullen to mischievous. Still, I'm not gonna let her off that easily. What will the people say if they know I let a demon walk away with minor injuries? Minor injuries, Gora supposed the loss of an arm and heavily bleeding legs, along with a broken spine, was considered minor for demons. She's pretty strong, I'll give her that. Pathetic compared to me, but okay-ish, Mickey muttered, using this opportunity to revert her demonification. She started with her horns, allowing them to recede so she could snuggle into Gora's chest without fearing she'd accidentally stab his neck. Gora planted a quick smooch on her temple. You should have retired from handling these kinds of issues. Why don't we have our son handle this one? Ha! He'll appreciate the gift. Because Mickey had seen enough of Issei's treasures to know what kind of girls were his type, which would be any girls that had an above-average kind of look, apparently, and chesty. That son of hers was quite diverse regarding his taste. But darling, the brat would just let her walk away since he has your big heart, Mickey supposed, continuing her demonification process, which left her body uncovered since all her clothes had been torn away during her transformation. I'm naked now. Cover me, my dear. Gora didn't need a second invitation and gladly embraced her, relishing the sensation of her chest pressed against his. He maintained his calm demeanor despite the warmth and intimacy of the moment. Well? He pressed on nonetheless. Mickey's mischievous tone returned. I'll have my slave, air assistant, make sure she listens to him. Play nice, HM? My assistant was my deaf master, I mean super spy. She could watch over the cheeky brat too. Would that ensure your full attention on me, beloved darling husband? Gora laughed warmly, his eyes filled with affection as he looked at his wife. I suppose I'll have nothing to worry about. All thanks to you, honey. Mickey's face lit up with excitement, and she couldn't help but let her playful side shine through. Ah, Gora! Let's do it right here. Take me right here, right now. I'm already stripped down anyway, so that's one step we can skip ahead. Maybe not here, sweetheart. It's rather blazing here. The husband chuckled. Why don't we head to our room first and let you wash away these sand off your skin? Ah. Of course. So you won't need to taste sand when you ravish me with your tongue. How wise of you, dear husband. If only you were my advisor, your sagely advice would surely have us ruling both heaven and earth. Gora couldn't help but shake his head with a bemused smile. And you wonder why our son isn't a vermin. He decided not to delve into the origins of their son's peculiar perversion. Is Miss Rabbit going to be okay? You needn't concern yourself with the well-being of a pathetic whelp, and yet you did. Truly, your kindness knows no bounds. Mickey. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Mickey quieted down, still clinging to him, while toning down her fangirl energy at his request. She cast a small magic circle by her mouth to bark her orders, and another on her ear to confirm that her loyal underling would comply. Shahun, get over here and take out this garbage. Sure thing, boss, came the obedient response, reflecting the unwavering loyalty her subjects had for her, despite their occasional sassy remarks. Tend to her wounds and then bring this long-eared whelp to my son, Mickey ordered with a tone of finality. Oh? Alive garbage then. That's a first from you, boss lady, her underling replied. Foo-foo. I would have spared her if not for my dear husband's benevolent temperament, Mickey boasted, casting a sidelong glance at Goru. Don't you roll your eyes on me now, feline. Why would I ever, your dreadful highness? Don't call me that. It's tacky. Mickey huffed, TSK. Now I'm getting distracted. Anyway, have him do whatever he wants to do with her. If he doesn't want to or wish to set her free, then kill her. The fur on her ears would make fine earmuffs, I'd wager. Your wish is my command and such, boss lady. Many people assumed that the Dread Empress would only accept lofty titles befitting royalty, but they couldn't have been more wrong. Mickey didn't care what people called her as long as it was done with respect, and she had a particular disdain for anything tacky. Scourge of Hell was among the more creative epithets she'd earned over the years. This flexibility endeared her to her subjects. They feared her, but they also respected her. Make sure the demon doesn't try any funny business. Stay as long as you need to warrant her obedience, and if she wriggles too much, break her bones. Cut her ears. Whatever, Mickey responded casually, much to Goru's chagrin. Be creative. I didn't pay you to be a clueless tart, just making sure. Duly noted, her assistant replied in a relaxed tone. Anything else? Another serving of pancake perhaps? Inform Sirzex about this, Mickey added, but then she changed her mind, her scarlet lips curling into a mischievous grin. Actually, no. Don't say a single word to him. Go and create some regulated chaos in my stead with that dear little sister of his. Let me know of his reactions. Oh, fancy, indeed. Now get over here, at once. Enjoy your second honeymoon, boss lady. Foo-foo-foo, that I will. Ending the call with a leering smirk, Mickey expectantly gazed back at her husband. Done. Now praise me as I've done well. Thank you, wifey, Goru muttered with an awkward smile. He couldn't help but wonder what their son, Issei, might do in this situation. Being the son of the Dread Empress had certainly left its mark on him, and no one knew exactly how he might handle the situation. Squealing with delight, Mickey grabbed her husband's arm, and with a wave of her hand, she conjured a portal leading to their grand suite. It was time to continue their sweet husband-wife time, and with the distance from the demon, the curse that had plagued her was finally lifted. Meanwhile, the injured demon lay on the crimson-stained sands, her wounds slowly closing. But regaining her strength would take days, and the loss of blood had left a deep mark. The once pristine beach was now tainted red, and if she wasn't a demon with a resolve to cling to her life harder than the Agria's crystals, she would have perished long before. I need to get out of here was her thought and next plan, but it seemed it would need to wait as another being appeared before her, blitzing in from a dark portal. She raised her head to see who it was and immediately wished she had never crossed paths with the tyrant demon earlier, for she would have preferred to face her again instead. Before her stood a woman with a deep tan, her long, dark purple hair pulled back into a ponytail, with split bangs framing her face. She wore a sleeveless and backless black shirt that clung to her lean, athletic build, accentuating her faint muscles and curves. A beige scarf wrapped around her neck, and a white logo resembling butterfly wings adorned the chest of her otherwise plain black shirt. The logo was notorious, a symbol of death to anyone who recognized it. She wasn't bothered that the sides of her ample weren't covered. Such trivial matters as sideboob were far from the thoughts of a grim reaper. Grinning with a cat-like prowess, she crouched before the demon's bewildered face, sporting a teasing smirk that could rival even the Dread Empress herself. Well, what do we have here? She purred with a playful gleam in her eye. If it ain't Miss Thunderthighs herself, the last survivor of a leperine village that got a one-way ticket to Ashtown. What brings you to this mysterious island, right smack in the center of the Bermuda Triangle, Morocco? Yorichi Shahuan, the former captain of the 2nd Infantry Division and affectionately known as the Hellraisers thanks to the Empress's penchant for using them to, well, raise literal hell. Whether it was settlements refusing to bow or kowtow to the Dread Empress or a stubborn pantry jar, the Hellraisers handled it. Later Yorichi would take on the title of Death Master, leading the Black 13, a covert unit specializing in nightly shenanigans, subterfuge, assassinations, or as Isabel once put it, cleaning out the trash. The result? Enemies left with more holes than a slice of Swiss cheese, primed for the Empress's legion to conquer. But, rewind to those days when Yorichi was merely tasked with ensuring the leperine demons faced their doom. Ah, memories! Or should I say Usajiyama Rumi? Now that you're chummy with the humans, huh? Yorichi taunted, letting a mischievous chuckle escape her lips. Can't blame you though. Human food can be pretty tempting. The demon's eyes widened. We've been keeping tabs on you ever since the peace treaty, Yorichi quipped, playfully poking Miruko's tiny nose just because she could. After all, you know what they say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Miruko snapped her face, attempting to sink her teeth into the Reaper's index finger, but Yoruichi was quicker, retracting her finger before it became a late afternoon snack. You just wait until I'm back on my feet. I'll kick you to Kingdom Come. Miruko growled, her fighting spirit undeterred. Yeah, heard that one before. Yoruichi shrugged dismissively as she rose to her feet. But seriously, how did you even get here? This is Boss Lady's private island. Did someone give you a one-way ticket, or did you think your bunny paddle could make it across the ocean? I swam here. Bullshit, the Reaper retorted, narrowing her golden eyes briefly before relenting. We would have spotted you coming a mile away with those floppy ears. Someone sent you here, didn't they? Spit it out now, and save yourself the trouble. Trust me, you don't want Boss Lady to start pulling out nails and other nasty tricks to make you talk. Something about pulling one's nails out and things like that. Things that Yoruichi would rather not do since it would impair their soul. A broken soul is no longer worth as much as a pristine one. That is, any soul that was fortunate enough to not meet the Dread Empress. Freya! Having recovered enough strength, Miruko kicked her leg into a sweeping strike. Yoruichi responded with precision, targeting a pressure point on Miruko's neck, causing her to slump into unconsciousness. Ah, the stubbornness of your kind, she muttered with a hint of exasperation. We could have had a bonfire of friendship, but no, your people just had to hate taxes that much. With the unconscious demon draped over her slender shoulder, Yoruichi opened a rift to connect the worlds. In all of her honesty, she was a little bit excited to meet the Empress' son again. After all, the boy was an amusing little shrimp. Hayate Issei was always a source of amusement, quick-witted, if not as ruthless as his mother. She chuckled, recalling the time she transformed into a cat to mess with him, only for him to retaliate by tossing catnip, and actually succeeding in making her high as a kite. That wasn't a memory she wanted to remember. Regardless, Hayate Issei was an interesting specimen. How could he not? He was the offspring of the Dread Empress after all. Break, Hyakushu. Inside Irina's infirmary bedroom, the self-proclaimed heroine of justice flinched as Issei unleashed a sneeze that could rival a dragon's roar, causing the sheets of her bed to flutter dramatically before settling back into place. God almighty! What on earth was that sneeze? Irina exclaimed, looking at Issei with a mix of shock and bewilderment. Ugh, sorry. Issei apologized, sniffling his nose and squeezing it with his thumb to get rid of the itchiness and ticklish post-sneeze sensation. I think my mom just did something stupid again. I'm terribly allergic to bullshit, after all. Irina raised an eyebrow. Stupid? What do you mean? You know, typical send a bunny girl demon to be my slave even though I abhor slavery kind of stupid. Or the classic send someone to protect me because my dad is overprotective kind of stupid. She huffed a breath giggle. That's just you daydreaming. Why would you need anyone to protect you here? True, Issei agreed with a nod. I mean, I already have someone at my place. The maid, remember? Although, she's not exactly a bunny girl. Turns out her ears are actually horns. Issei's tone turned disappointed as he recounted the revelation. I was hoping for those fluffy bunny ears, but instead, I got a handful of demon horns. Life can be so unpredictable. Irina's eyes widened in surprise. Wait, what? Yeah, it was a letdown, Issei sighed. I thought I'd be able to enjoy some bunny ear action, but nope, just a couple of bony protrusions. Disappointing, right? Not that. Oh? As in, why would she send another? Well, probably because I'm me, I think. There'd be nasty people out there wanting to get rid of me. Probably. Issei said casually. So how are you feeling, loser? How am I feeling my foot? You have people trying to hurt you. Issei waved a dismissive hand. Oh, don't worry too much about that. It's all just speculation, based on my extensive knowledge of uninspired anime plotlines. Besides, I've got my very own heroine of justice right here. He grinned at Irina. You can protect me from any potential threats, right? Why am I the one protecting you? You're the guy. You protect me. Unknowingly, Irina had committed herself into his inane hypothetical. And besides, heroes protect people, not just a single person. Or a half-man, half-demon person, Issei chuckled mischievously. Well, technically, I'm a half-demon, and usually, people need protection from demons like me because we're considered the evil villains and all. But you see, I'm also half-human, which means I qualify for protection under your jurisdiction, too. So, you should definitely be my guardian angel. Well, more like guardian half-angel. After all, my lower half has been known to break a few rules from your magic book. Irina's face turned beet red. It's called the Bible, you pervert. Same difference, Issei quipped with a wink. So, Irina, will you embrace your destiny as the protector of the half-evil, half-human guy? We could even give you a cool title, like the Dark Heroine of Justice. Plus, we have cookies and magic brownies on the dark side. What do you say? Irina emitted confused noises, unsure on how to respond to this semi-proposal and semi-request. Little did they know, Issei would find himself amazed at his prediction within the next few hours. The drowning cheer of the 10,000 spectators fell deaf on her ears. Stage fright was a common phobia occurring even in professional rating games, and Lysafash Academy would not have her students suffering from that fear. With this exam, they exposed their students to the scrutiny of thousands during determining battles, only activating the soundproofing during the tactical phase of a rating game. Thankfully, Atlanta didn't suffer from such phobia. Not the obvious ones, at least. The verdant huntress gracefully leaped to the side as her opponent unleashed a wave of corrupted energy with a slash of her sword. Black and crimson exploded against the barrier, leaving behind dark smoldering smoke as it stifled. Atlanta knew well of her opponent's brute strength coupled with monstrous attacks, and knew well that she had little hope to overpower her in terms of endurance. A hit from that same attack and Atlanta doubted she would be able to stand or even retain her consciousness. From the beginning, her strategy had been to avoid direct clashes at all costs. However, she had her own advantages, speed and deadly accuracy with her arrows. When I get my hands on your neck, I swear, Jean seethed, frustration evident as Atlanta skillfully evaded her strike once again, keeping their distance. Atlanta harnessed the mana from her surroundings, drawing its pure essence from the vast amount of demonic energy rich within hell. With a swift motion, she released 5 arrows in quick succession. These were no ordinary arrows, but rather projectiles formed by Tauropolos, the great bow of heaven blessed by Artemis herself. They could pierce through nearly anything, but for practicality, Atlanta referred to them as regular arrows, despite their extraordinary nature. Unfortunately for her, her opponent was anything but regular. Child's play, Jean scoffed as she effortlessly sliced through 1, 2, and even 5 of Atlanta's arrows with her sword. Her silver hair billowed behind her as she propelled herself forward, malice gleaming in her ashen yellow eyes. She was eager to strike down the leaping huntress. The crowd erupted in awe as Atlanta kicked off an invisible barrier, launching herself into the air. Her iridescent hair flowed gracefully while Jean's sword struck the barrier, creating a shower of sparks. She gritted her teeth and glanced back at the airborne huntress, fury forming in her eyes. Once again, Atlanta fired 3 arrows, 2 aimed perfectly at Jean's eyes if she didn't parry them away, while the other was aimed at the wall next to her instead. Not bothering to cut down the arrow that would have missed her either way, Jean smirked. Heh. You missed. She began to taunt but was abruptly cut off as the 3rd arrow exploded, engulfing her in a fiery blast. Atlanta landed gracefully on the other side of the arena, her opponent shrouded in black smoke. She drew 2 more arrows, pointing them toward the top of the dome. "O Artemis, I beseech thee," Atlanta chanted as she drew Tauropolos' string. The arrowheads gleamed with a mystifying green light, blessed by the goddess of the hunt herself, enhancing her arrows with enough destructive power to level an entire town if necessary. Phoebus catastrophe. The 2 arrows vanished briefly before raining down hundreds of projectiles on their sole target. The entire arena was bathed in a beautiful green light as the myriad of arrows pulverized the smokescreen concealing Jean. La Grodement du Haine. Following the declaration, the green light was washed away by searing red as infernal flames consumed the entire arena floor. The flames scorched everything in their path, leaving the huntress with no escape. Her screams were drowned out by the roar of the blazing inferno, as it tore through her dress and flesh like searing claws. Jean's flames were unlike any other. They didn't simply burn. They didn't leave behind charred remains. No, her flames, the embodiment of her burning hatred, tore through flesh like paper. Like I said. Child's play, Jean declared triumphantly, her eyes reflecting the raging flames. The fallen saintess emerged from the flames, her expression no longer one of amusement but annoyance. Her armor, dark violet and untouched by the inferno, contrasted with the tattered remnants of her skirt. Light bruises marred her exposed thighs from the earlier explosion. With a relaxed strut, Jean allowed her flames to continue their destructive dance around the arena as she approached the fallen huntress. Confidence and arrogance practically radiated from her being. Atlanta, though battered and bruised and critically wounded, remained on her feet. Her dress was in shambles, ripped apart by the fiery explosion. Her left arm hung limply at her side, the sleeve gone, blood dripping from the flayed flesh. Despite her ragged breathing and the numerous gashes covering her body and cheek, Atlanta refused to admit defeat. She stood defiant. Sheathing her black sword, Jean smirked as she tilted the hunter's chin up, observing the determination still burning in Atlanta's eyes. Still standing, nah? That's a surprise from a fragile speedster like you. She learned why when she felt a sudden jolt of pain from her belly. Jean gazed down, wincing slightly, more out of annoyance than pain. She found herself impaled by an arrow, materialized in Atlanta's right hand, and thrust into her. The arrow had shattered a small hole in her armor, a final act of defiance from the huntress. "Tch, sneaky bastard," Jean muttered, her eyes widening in surprise, and then a mixture of anger and grudging respect. Furious that she had allowed herself to be hit twice, Jean stepped back a few paces to yank the arrow out of her stomach. The arrowhead had torn apart a chunk of her flesh and muscle, but she didn't flinch, even as she returned the arrow to its sender. Atlanta groaned softly as Jean thrust the arrow into the huntress's solar plexus, then slashed her sword diagonally, intending to cleave her body in two. But the verdant huntress disappeared in soft blue lights before Jean could carry out her brutal strike. Examinee Atlanta is deemed no longer able to continue. One life awarded to Examinee Jean Dark. As the applause thundered in the arena, Jean's seemingly eternal scowl returned to her face, remaining there for a moment before transitioning into a grin, and then a rather sinister smirk. It was as if she were stuck in a perpetual scowl-grin-smirk cycle. Warm lights encased her body, and she could feel the wound on the lower left side of her stomach starting to close itself. Shortly after, she was teleported back to the mess hall. As she dematerialized her battle attire, settling back into her casual wear consisting of a cobalt blue coat and a one-piece black sweater that reached her thighs, her trademark smug smirk graced her lips. She noticed a number of the weaker examinees looking at her with fear in their eyes. Pathetic weaklings who didn't know their place. These little parasites wouldn't last long in this university. If anything, her only regret from that battle was that it didn't last long enough. But winning, as satisfying as it was, wasn't the only reason why she was at this hell university. Vengeance had always been her main goal. Break. While voice filled with genuine wonder, Ingvild averted her harmless sunset eyes at her new friends excitedly. "Did you see that? That was amazing. She's so strong and cool." "Really? You like the cheeky brat?" Kuroka raised her sleek black eyebrow, her amber eyes locked onto the aforementioned cheeky brat. "She looks like she gets angsty at least 4 times a day to me, Nyan. Why do they keep yelling their attacks? Is it a human thing?" Serorg asked with actual innocence and genuine wonder. "The girl I faced earlier did that too. I dunno. Probably 'cause they think it's cool, Nyan." Ingvild blinked. "Isn't it? Kinda stupid if you asked me, but I don't care that much. If they want to give handouts when they fight, then that's their call," Kuroka huffed flippantly. "It's still stupid. Maybe they need to yell it out to cast it," Serorg guessed. "Could have just whispered it then." Kuroka pointed out. "You're a part human. Do you say your spell's name as well, Ingvild?" "Me? No. I imagine how I want to manipulate my demonic energy and mana in my head," Ingvild replied nervously, her worry washing over her face like a tsunami. "Why? Is that wrong? Should I start naming my spells?" "Course you don't, you goofball." Kuroka tittered. "Only idiots yell out their spells or attacks like that." "You're no idiot, Aincha, you adorable whittle thing you." Ingvild emitted confused Leviathan-like noises as Kuroka smothered her into her chest, ruffling her hair with a playful fervor. Serorg, the stoic observer, couldn't help but smirk at the scene unfolding before him. It was a peculiar but strangely comfortable circle of companionship he'd found himself in. When he first arrived, he never would have imagined it. Back then, he believed he had to prove his might before anyone would accept him. Now, he owed quite a lot to that closet sadist snarky bastard, Issei, and perhaps an apology for possibly shattering his friend's ribs earlier. "Issei's taking a while, isn't he?" Serorg said idly, waiting for the next announcement to come up. "What's he doing?" Dunno, Kuroka replied with a deflated huff as she let go of Ingvild. "I ain't got any friends who got beaten up by a walking sack of muscles. Ain't got no friends either to begin with, Nyan. I was a very lonely feline stuck in a world filled with windbags with an ego 5 times their intellect." Ingvild chimed in. "I didn't have many friends too, Ms. Kuroka." "Stop calling me Mrs." Kuroka grumbled. "I'm 20, Nyan. I'm sorry." Seeing Ingvild shrink back, Kuroka melted instantly. "Daw, it's okay. Nichan's only joking." Serorg raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "You're 22, you too?" Kuroka exclaimed, her eyes dancing with humor. "I knew you'd look too buff to be 18. What about Issei? I haven't asked?" "Either 18 or 19. Serorg said. "I hope he's 18 too. I'm 18, Ingvild muttered sadly, her voice tinged with faux despair. to which Kuroka immediately showered her with cuddles, already treating her like a little sister. Serorg couldn't help but marvel at the ever-deepening friendship between Kuroka and Ingvild. However, his curiosity gnawed at him like a persistent itch. "What's your hold-up, Kuroka?" Kuroka's eyes glittered with mischief as she leaned in slightly, lowering her eyelids to give herself a roguish look. Might have committed a murder or two, Nyan. Been on the run for a few years until I got bored of having to jump here and there and here." "You're a felon?" Ingvild exclaimed, her eyes wide with fascination rather than fear. Strangely enough, she seemed more intrigued than concerned about being hugged by a killer. "Let me just say I won't do it to anyone who doesn't deserve it, Her tone was sing-song and devoid of guilt, but Serorg couldn't ignore the underlying danger that lurked beneath her casual, cat-like demeanor. He made a mental note to stay on her good side, as he respected the yokai's capabilities. "But yes, I was a delinquent." "For a bit, Nyan," Ingvild gasped, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "That's so exciting." Kuroka stared at her with a surprised expression. "I swear you have a strange taste for things, Vivi. I only read books for most of my life, a fair bit of them depict many adventures," the Leviathan confessed with a touch of dejection. "You're beautiful, strong, and you must have many tales to share. My life is so dull compared to yours, it's like a stale, dry biscuit." The Nekasha couldn't resist smushing their cheeks together affectionately. "An exciting life doesn't always translate to a good life, you know. You don't want my kind of life." A bit flustered by the close contact, Ingvild stammered, "Why?" "Because you're adorable and have a good heart, Maya. You deserve better." "Oh, thank you," Ingvild muttered, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I still long for a little bit of excitement, however. Well, as long as it doesn't get you into too much trouble, Naya." Lost in his own contemplation, Serorg couldn't help but empathize with Kuroka. Compared to most devils, his life hadn't been the most enviable. For years he had worked alone, his own pillar of support alongside his mother. Enrolling in this university had been his attempt to reshape his fate, a last hurrah before accepting whatever comes after. He realized he might have already taken the first few steps toward doing just that when he accidentally encountered Issei. Sitting here with this group of eccentrics was more comforting than he would have expected, and even dealing with Issei's quippy remarks, though they seemed to be a frequent occurrence, didn't seem all that bad in hindsight. Just as he was about to call out to Issei, the sharp-tongued demon emerged from a nearby hallway, looking like he had forgotten where his seat was despite only 20 minutes passing since his visit to Irina. "Yo, Issei," Serorg began, ready to wave him over, but his words were abruptly cut off by Sona's stoic announcement. The interruption left him hanging, a comically frozen wave halfway through the air, earning a few chuckles from Kuroka and Ingvild. "Hanakai Momo, Ingvild Leviathan, please rise to the arena." As Ingvild's name was called out, she couldn't help but mumble under her breath. Oh no, the pressure of the arena weighed on her, and Kuroka sensed Ingvild's body tensing up. "I don't do well in crowds," Kuroka flashed her a reassuring grin. "You'll do fine, Nyan, just picture the people as peeled potatoes or something." "Go get her, tiger," Serorg chimed in, trying to ease her nerves. "Take it easy, Ingvild. Don't stress it too much. You can do it." Why yes, with Kuroka's blessing and Serorg's pep talk, Ingvild swallowed her fear and headed toward the teleporter. Along the way, she bumped into Issei, who briefly asked where their table was. But Ingvild was still too tense to reply properly, her honest eyes betraying her anxiety. Issei scratched his cheek, pondering how he could provide some moral support for this timid part devil. Serorg and Kuroka didn't need it, one exuded confidence, while the other simply didn't care. Ingvild, however, was a different story. "You see, Ingvild," Issei said with a light-hearted tone, "just cast the loudest, biggest spell you know to drown out the noises, and you'll be peachy." Ingvild hesitated, her voice quivering as she replied, "But I've never fought before, I don't want to get hurt." Issei's expression softened, and he spoke sincerely, "And I don't want you to get hurt either." "Hell, Kuroka doesn't either." He couldn't help but notice Kuroka giving a very threatening look to the person operating the teleporter, who wisely felt a bit intimidated even though they didn't know the reason why. "Sometimes if you don't want to get hurt, you gotta hurt first, or they're gonna hurt you otherwise," Issei continued, offering his advice. "Which brings me back to my earlier suggestion, cast the biggest, baddest spell you know, and you'll be good. Your opponent shoots magic too, as a bit of a hint." Ingvild took a deep breath and nodded, her determination growing. "Okay, I'll do just so." Issei watched her make her way to the arena, where she spared another glance at him. He raised an OK hand sign, and she nodded lightly several times before eventually phasing away via the teleporter. As he observed her departure, he couldn't help but feel a swell of pride for the timid devil who was about to face her fears head-on. Is this what being a father feels like? Issei couldn't help but mutter his intrusive thoughts aloud, earning a couple of curious glances from a nearby table of devils who seemed baffled by his sudden existential crisis. With her gone, Issei returned to the table, where he found two equally tense weirdos anxiously watching the screen, their expressions more wound than a spring-loaded mousetrap. You two as well, huh? Issei commented, his voice tinged with amusement. Of course, Kuroka grumbled, her usual laid-back demeanor replaced with an unusual edge in her voice. If that girl hurts her, I'll kill her, Serorg chimed in, his concern evident in his own way. Killing would be a bit too much, but fair is fair. This is a test. And prison is just an escape room, Kuroka muttered grimly, her tail twitching restlessly as if she were mentally preparing her escape plan should the worst come to it. Who are you, her parents? Issei couldn't resist sniggering, although he could see where they were coming from. He didn't want to imagine any harm coming to the harmless Leviathan. Strangely enough, he didn't seem too invested in his friend's girlfriend. Momo could take it. Probably. Then again, it was either Momo or Ingvild. While Momo had been his friend for 2 to 3 years, Ingvild simply possessed that vulnerable air that prompted others' protective instincts. Not to mention he wasn't that close to her to begin with, being in different classrooms and all. It was like trying to pick between a tofu sandwich and a plain rice cake. That being said, for a fairly sensible reason, Issei wasn't as worried, at least not to the extent of Kuroka's or Serorg's uneasiness. Kuroka's tails were lashing about like black-furred whips, while Serorg had been tapping his knuckles non-stop ever since Ingvild had left the table, producing a rhythm that would have made a nervous woodpecker jealous. You guys need to chill out, Issei offered his sage advice, though it wasn't doing much to cool the heated atmosphere. You should be able to sense her insane pool of demonic power. You could drown a person in it. Won't be much use if she's too nervous to use it, Nyan, Kuroka pointed out, her eyes still locked on the screen like a cat stalking a particularly tricky laser pointer. True that, Issei agreed, which is why I told her to go shit you. Huh? No way. The entire mess hall gasped as a thunderous roar erupted from the screen. Turning around to witness the spectacle, Issei found Ingvild had just conjured a giant water serpent, a fiery bird that looked suspiciously like a phoenix, and a wind elemental shaped like a pegasus, although it lacked the essential element of flesh to make it complete. The unexpected display of power not only stunned the audience but also left Issei questioning the term timid devil when it came to Ingvild. After all, who knew that beneath that shy exterior lurked the heart of a magical powerhouse with a penchant for unleashing a tidal wave of mythical creatures? I'm sorry! Issei could hear Ingvild's timid apology as she unleashed a spectacle of magical chaos upon Momo. Her opponent's confidence had been thoroughly obliterated as her reverse spell was rendered null and void by the onslaught of elemental beasts. Feeling the dread growing from his former classmate as she would then be ripped apart by Ingvild's summoning magic, a satisfied smirk latched onto Issei's face as the demon muttered aptly, "Nice break." After Ingvild's triumphant return from the arena, she was met with an enthusiastic reception. Kuroka, in particular, went all in with her celebration, embracing Ingvild as though she just won the grand prize in a Hug the Half-Devil contest. My AAN. I knew you were talented, but I didn't know you were that crazy good. Kuroka squealed with enough enthusiasm to power a catnip factory. She smothered Ingvild with affection, hugging her so that the half-devil probably experienced the effects of spontaneous flattening. Color me one, impressed cat meow. Thank you? Ingvild blushed, her cheeks tinting a lovely shade of crimson, managed to giggle through the suffocating hug, her laughter sounding like the tinkling of magical bells. I was worried for practically nothing, Serorg admitted, his towering presence somehow managing to convey a sense of relief and awe. He puffed out a breath of air like a relieved giant who had just discovered that the itty-bitty humans hadn't been squashed underfoot. That was Hyder summoning magic, wasn't it? Kuroka, always ready to correct any misperceptions, raised a sleek eyebrow and let out a faux scoff. Summoning? PFT, excuse you, magicless peasant, those are what you call as elemental evocations. Nyan, conjuring flamey birdies and other menacing stuff out of nothing, relates more to elemental magic, so ha. Issei couldn't resist joining the fray, offering his 2 cents. See, Vivi, the next time someone makes you mad, just scare them with one of your pets, he suggested. Or just call Kuroka, and she'll do just the same. With the preliminaries exam still ongoing for the coming weeks and their first victory in the bag, Kuroka proposed a celebratory lunch to commemorate their win. Serorg and Issei readily agreed, their stomachs growling in anticipation. After all, hunger knows no bounds. So, the group found themselves loafing around outside the arena, ignoring its festivities as they embarked on their quest for food. I don't know about you guys, but I could murder a pizza, Issei declared, his gaze sweeping over the university's western district, completely disregarding the high-class restaurants that looked like they had swallowed a diamond mine. They were the only ones strolling down the street, alongside a few workers doing their worker stuff, as most people were crowding the arena. "I want one with tuna," Kuroka pipped. "I'd eat anything," Serorg stated matter-of-factly, his appetite evident in his straightforward response. "Just double it, I bet. It's free anyway." One of the benefits of enrolling in Lucifash was that he could get anything it could offer without spending a wad of cash. Simply flash his student ID and pizza shall be served. Everything the students spent would be paid by Lucifash itself. Rich bastards. Either way, you Vivi? Anything you want? Extra cheese? Extra beef? Extra salt, I guess? Anything as long as it's not pineapples. "I don't mind pineapples on pizza," Serorg said, throwing his support behind the controversial topping. "I always knew you're a freak, sigh." Serorg merely shrugged his muscular shoulders, clearly unapologetic about his all-consuming taste. "I'm not a picky eater. Being picky and having a taste are two different things." What's a pizza?" Ingvild innocently interjected, causing the group to come to a complete, synchronized halt. "What?" The trio chimed in unison, their faces mirroring a mixture of shock and disbelief. Not used to being stared at by three people at such close proximity, Ingvild replied warily, what? All right. "We need to talk to your parents," Issei quipped, breaking the stunned silence. Ingvild remained clueless, following the three like an obedient duckling, her curiosity piqued. She couldn't help but wonder what kind of culinary masterpiece this mysterious pizza dish might be classified as. The answer soon presented itself as they reached their gastronomic destination, Pizzeria alla Arcoletta, a famous pizzeria that was even approved by the former Dread Empress herself, hence the name. There, Issei suggested a rule that students like Serorg should be banned from placing orders, given that the Bale had once ordered 4 Empress-sized pizzas for himself. And the most shocking part? He didn't even order a Diet Coke. The absolute man. "Now what?" Serorg exclaimed, confusion etched across his face. He thought they were going to eat in the restaurant instead of ordering a takeout. He had been eagerly anticipating a meal, and the sudden change of plans had thrown him off. "I'm hungry," Issei offered a half-hearted explanation, though the truth was far more complex. "The employees are looking at me weird," he said, his gaze flickering uncomfortably towards the restaurant where his mother's portraits adorned the walls. He preferred not to dine in a place that felt like a shrine to his own life. "Let's eat at your place, Nyan," Kuroka suggested. "I don't like the cafeteria when there's no people. It's deader than a graveyard. Creeps me out." Serorg hesitated for a moment, contemplating the logistics of hosting an impromptu pizza party. "My room isn't that big, you know," he rejected before nudging his head at the guy carrying boxes of pizzas next to him, the group's other dedicated pack mule. His is. Guy lives in the penthouse. Kuroka and Ingvild, however, had different reactions to this revelation. Kuroka's eyes gleamed with a certain gold-digging vibe, as if she just struck a jackpot. On the other hand, Ingvild's eyes sparkled with honest excitement, like a child discovering a hidden treasure chest. "No. Frickin' way," Kuroka squealed with delight, her mind already conjuring visions of plush penthouse living. I knew it's the right idea to tag along with you guys." "Well, I'm not against it," Issei nodded. Not the slightest bit, in fact. First, because Rias wasn't there, busy with her talent scouting back in the arena/Coliseum. Second, because he wanted. "Well, I'm not against it," he admitted, his enthusiasm matching Ingvild's. In fact, he was more than just not against it. He was genuinely excited for this unexpected twist in their day. There were several reasons for his eagerness. First, because Rias wouldn't be there, busy with her talent scouting back in the arena/bootleg Coliseum. Secondly, because he wanted to see how the prim and proper Gremory would react when she found her abode being littered by other people that weren't her own peerage. Thirdly, he wanted to share some za with Zest, and to introduce her to this band of misfits. Break. In the penthouse, the atmosphere took on an air of unexpected formality, as they were greeted by Issei's personal maid, Zest. She had darted towards the elevator with the speed of a bullet train upon hearing the familiar ding, eager to welcome her master. However, when she arrived, she discovered that Master Issei wasn't the only person needing to be greeted. "Welcome back, Master Issei," she greeted them with a customary bow, her tone and demeanor as impeccable as ever. "And Master's friends. This one is Master Issei's personal maid, Zest. Please allow me to take your belongings." "No need, thanks." Serorg, who was currently acting as the group's pizza delivery hero, declined the offer and held on to the stack of squarish cardboard boxes with his incredible strength. 5 in his left, and 4 more on his right hand. She really said this one, huh? He then whispered to Issei with a surprised look. I told you she's that stiff. Issei whispered back. Ingvild, always the ray of sunshine, couldn't help but be excited about the presence of a maid. Wow! A maid! She beamed, greeting Zest with genuine warmth. Good afternoon. Zest returned the greeting with a polite smile. Good afternoon, young lady. Don't you have one in your castle or something, Nyan? Ingvild's face lit up with realization. Oh yes, actually. I forgot, she admitted with a sheepish grin. Meanwhile, Kuroka took in a deep breath of the perfumed air, and then exhaled with satisfaction. Ah, smells like disgustingly rich people's place, she whirred, her tone indicating her despite her words. Nay, are you looking for a new pet, Issei? I'm down to be your pet, Nyan. I'll consider it after I buy a litter box. Kuroka pouted, torn between amusement and indignation. How was your exam, master? Zest asked politely, a bit confused as to why Serorg refused her help, but as Issei had taught her, she shouldn't push it. As Zest inquired about Issei's exam, the group followed him through the opulent penthouse's hallway. Issei's response was typically nonchalant. Went alright. Lasted shorter than I did. Only Kuroka caught his dirty joke, snickering to herself. Take these gentle dogs and Ingvild to the pit, would you? I'm gonna change first. Kuroka exchanged a confused glance with Serorg at the mention of a pit. Their minds raced, imagining a bottomless chasm in the middle of the penthouse. Their concern would soon alleviate once they realized that Issei meant a conversation pit rather than a literal bottomless pit. Why yes, master, although there is something I must tell you. There is someone who is expecting your return in your chamber. Issei, along with his little entourage, paused in the hallway, curiosity etching their faces. Who? She refused to state her name, master, but I was told she knew master and master's mother personally, so I. Issei couldn't bear to see Zest wearing that guilty look, so he quickly dismissed it with a wave of his hand. That's fine. You people go ahead, I'll be back. And wash your damn hands first. Zest, go have a slice of each, will you? The group obediently shuffled toward the pizza boxes, their rumbling stomachs outweighing their curiosity. It wasn't that they weren't eager to uncover the mystery, but rather an acknowledgement that this wasn't their home to poke around, coupled with the undeniable fact that they were absolutely starving, whilst Ingvild simply wanted to know more why this circular cuisine seemed to be a big deal. Serorg seemed so desperate to grab the entire box and mash it inside his mouth. As Issei ascended the stairs, he extended the reach of his demonic senses. Sure enough, he sensed the presence of a demon right inside his room, and another one, blurrier and more elusive, intertwined with it. It seemed as though one of these beings intended to conceal their presence by blending it with the other's aura. Meanwhile, his friends gathered below, their eyes glued to the scene like fans at a tennis match, waiting with bated breath for the big reveal. Issei swung open the door with all the nonchalance of a man expecting to find an unexpected guest. Yo, what's up? About time you came by, he greeted the intruder with a casual two-finger salute. The sight that greeted him was nothing short of bizarre. Seated nonchalantly on his bed was Yoruchi, her trademark laid-back demeanor in full swing. She sat there with both hands and legs crossed, as if she owned the place. Sprawled on the floor beside her was the other demon he had sensed earlier, looking like she'd gone through a rough patch with the Grim Reaper. While she wasn't bleeding, her body bore visible bruises, an artistic masterpiece in various shades of purple and blue. Her hands were firmly bound behind her back by a magical ring, and her ankles were similarly restrained, keeping her securely in place. But what truly seized Issei's attention was the distinctive feature they both shared: long, white-furred ears. The newcomer's ears were strikingly similar to Zest's, but with an air of extra fluffiness. As his gaze traveled downward, he couldn't help but be captivated by her thighs that seemed sculpted from marble, their chiseled perfection rendering them capable of grinding coffee beans to dust. He rubbed his eyes just to make sure he wasn't on acid or an illusion spell. Illusion spell wasn't as likely because his mother had taught him how to essentially rebound the spell, but acid? He could always get intoxicated without realizing. Issei stood outside his bedroom door for a good 5 seconds, staring out of the massive windows with equally massive automatic shutters that filtered the artificial sun's mild light. He needed those precious moments to process the bizarre scene within. What's up? Serorg's voice boomed from below, curiosity brimming as he devoured his cheesy slice of pizza. The others were already deep into their lunch, with Kuroka attempting to give Ingvild an impromptu lesson on the forbidden art of utensil use. Zest, ever the diligent maid, hovered nearby, her eyes trained nervously on her master. Am I awake right now? Issei mumbled to himself, his voice laden with disbelief. When had his life taken this surreal turn? Since when did he have not one, but 2 dark-skinned girls wearing black and white leotards inside his bedroom? What? Serorg's baffled reply drifted up the stairs, but Issei was too busy pondering his existence to respond. The Bale shrugged, and devoured his first bite of the round-shaped lunch. Issei opened and closed the door, as if testing reality's resilience. But when he ventured back inside, there they were, Yoruchi with her enigmatic expression and the bruised, battered demon who looked like she'd taken a tumble down the world's most punishing staircase. Issei finally vocalized his confusion. Hell are you doing here? And why does she look like she just tumbled down a mountain and hit every tree on the way? Boss lady sent me, replied the Death Master, answering most of his questions in one answer. Her too. She harassed Boss lady. Oh. The pieces immediately click into place into a jigsaw puzzle of absurdity. Still strange how his inane rambling about bunny-eared girls showing up in his bedroom came true. Well, I suppose stupider choices have been made. Why isn't she dead yet? She was about to be, but Boss lady spared her. Strange, I know, but your father's there too, she added with a sly grin. I healed her, but she keeps trying to break away, so I paralyzed her instead. That explains the bruised and battered aesthetic. Yoruchi nodded in agreement, defending herself. Well, I kept having to heal her every time I corrected her unruly behavior, as Boss lady would put it. I got pissed off eventually. How considerate. Issei didn't flinch this time. Heal her and set her free then. I'm not housing a slave. Yoruchi had expected that reply. She had spent enough time to know a bit of his character, especially when he had taken in a little bit of her dry wit. Emphasis on little bit. Doesn't necessarily have to be a slave. Could be your bodyguard. She's pretty strong, you know. Same thing if she doesn't want to. Get her out of here. Sure. She muttered, igniting her hand with a white flame as she got off the bed. I'll set free her poor, tortured soul from her mortal coil. That's not what I meant. That's what Boss lady told me to do if you're setting her loose. God damn it. The hell did that monster of a mother want from him? With a dreary sigh, realizing the complexity of the situation, Issei waved Yoruchi to get back. She complied with an amused smirk, and proceeded to sit like a sleaze. Yoruchi's smirk turned into an amused grin. Your mother's words are absolute, even if they baffle you. To most people, I'm part of those most people, Yoruchi said with a shrug. As Issei approached the writhing demon, the Grim Reaper offered a warning, her tone tinged with amusement. Careful now. She's a bit feisty, this one. Might look more like a rabbit, but her temperament is more hellhound than fluffy bunny. Issei had faced hellhounds before, thanks to his mother's unconventional methods of character development. He couldn't forget the time when he was 7, and she had pitted him against those monstrous, fire-breathing, and poison-drooling dogs. Of course, she hadn't expected him to fully tame them with a wave of his hand and some strategically placed dog treats in his pants a few hours in advance. Demonic mothers tended to raise quick-thinking children, after all. True enough, when he crouched to finally have a look at her face, the demon flinched and trashed violently, injuring her wrists and ankles as their binds gripped her the more she struggled, and delivered jolts of electricity through her body until she stopped fighting back. It was a painful and efficient method to ensure the Dread Empress prisoners wouldn't try anything stupid. Inhumane, yes, but her enemies were rarely humans to begin with. Despite the brutality of the situation, Issei remained unfazed. Crouching down to get a closer look at her face, he observed the demon's flinching and violent thrashing, the binds growing her as she panted heavily, clearly exhausted from the ordeal. But what truly caught Issei's attention was the unique aspect of this demon, her real bunny ears. Without much ceremony, he reached out and stroked the thin fur of her leporine ear, confirming its authenticity. In response, the demon named Miruko met his gaze with a fearless grin, her red pupils narrowing to pebbles. You'll be quaking in your boots once I'm out of these cuffs. Yeah, you'll kick both of us till kingdom come. Yoruchi groaned. She observed his actions with silent excitement, as she knew the boy was anything but predictable. Was he going to tear away one of her ears to assert dominance? Would he unhinge her jaw so she couldn't try to bite him? She couldn't tell, but she could easily picture his mother doing all of the above. Issei, however, was in an inquisitive mood. As he continued to inspect her peculiar ears, he couldn't resist posing an unusual question, his tone curious and, of course, dead. All right. Here's a question. Do you use shampoo to wash your ears? Or do you use some special kind of soap? Yoruchi raised an eyebrow, her amusement growing as she wondered just how Issei's unique brand of conversation would unfold in this bizarre encounter. It was an odd question to ask, considering the circumstances, but then again, nothing seemed ordinary when it came to Issei and his peculiar interactions. Then again, there's those 5-in-1 shampoos. You could just use a wet towel too to scrub them clean. I guess, Issei muttered, rubbing his jaw as his eyes and hands remained focused on decrypting one of the world's niggling mysteries. How do you wear a headset? Or AirPods? I'm not gonna judge. Do you twist the cable round your ears? Won't that be painful though? Maruko, for once in her life, found herself genuinely confused by the bizarre turn of the conversation. She couldn't quite grasp Issei's intentions. What's going on here? Are you planning to lower my guard? She asked incredulously, swatting his hand with her ear in an attempt to fend off his inquisitive touch. Not a chance, bud. What? Issei responded nonchalantly. It's not every day I get to see an actual living leporine demon. You know her people? Yoruichi asked. Of course I do, Issei replied, his tone oozing casual certainty. He decided to keep the true origin of his knowledge under wraps. A random dive into demonology sparked by the revelation that Zest's horns weren't, in fact, rabbit ears. The pursuit of knowledge was a wonderful thing, especially when it involved uncovering the existence of a demon with authentic bunny ears, all thanks to the trusty Demonopedia. Oh, and the little tidbit about his mother's village flattening spree? Well, that was just a footnote in his demonological research. No need to delve into the trivialities of his mother's decision-making process. As for guilt, Issei hadn't given it a second thought. Why would he? That would be as absurd as carrying the sins of his mother, which, according to some ancient scripture, was a big no-no. Plus, if he tried to shoulder the weight of her sins, he'd probably end up flatter than a rice cracker. Back to business, Issei adopted an air of authority seasoned with a pinch of his mother's notorious reputation. Listen up, he declared, his tone both informal and commanding. Whether you like it or not, you're stuck with me. Or you can meet an untimely end, thanks to dear old Mom, who, by the way, is worse than the four Satans combined. He paused dramatically, then added, give it a few weeks, and you'll get the official all right. After that you can do your thing. I'm not in the business of twisting arms, you know. Yoruichi couldn't help but grin at Issei's audacious charm. She wondered if this boy could really succeed in convincing her stubborn companion. She must admit, his sales pitch was quite something. Actually, I don't know what you're gonna do here, Issei muttered, his voice tinged with a hint of uncertainty. The hell is she supposed to do? Watch the damn apartment. Yoruichi simply shrugged, her hands spreading in a Gallic gesture of resignation. Anything you want. What if I don't want anything from her? Then I'll just kill her, you brute. It's my job. Yoruichi leaned back on her hands, casually exposing the side of her chest that wasn't covered by her black one-piece. Making sure she plays nice with you is also part of my job. Issei scrunched his brown eyebrows. What do you mean? Yoruichi leaned back on her hands, a mischievous glint in her eyes, casually exposing the side of her chest that wasn't covered by her black one-piece attire. Can't just let her roam loose under your sole supervision. You have academic matters to tend to, right? His eyes narrowed in suspicion. Where do you think you're going to sleep? With a sly grin, Yoruichi replied, What's wrong with this bed? It's mine, Issei stated firmly. And I people on it. Yoruichi's expression didn't waver, and she decided to play along. So, I can't have you sleeping on it while I'm ing. I promise I'll keep quiet. You can't, because I'd want you to join. The words hung in the air, effectively silencing the Reaper as she visibly flinched. What can I say? I have a broad range of taste in women. Including those going through a dry spell. The Death Master wavered. Not my fault there's not a single living soul fitting my type. Issei was just teasing, of course. Partly teasing. Yeah. Exactly. So veer off because you're still in my strike range. Yoruichi raised an eyebrow, her scowl fading into a smirk. You shouldn't toy with a lady's heart like that, you know? Okay, boomer. Alright, you little shit, Yoruichi shot back, her scowl returning. Reapers don't age. Demons don't age. When they hit 27, their body enters a state of permanent limbo until they choose not to. I'm still very much in my prime, mind you. Issei wasn't one to back down, and he maintained his mildly deadpan expression. Which is why you're well within my range. Shit. This boy's good. Too scarily good for a shut-in. Number 19-year-old should possess this kind of poise and maintain that mildly deadpan look. She couldn't out-tease him as easily anymore, and it frustrated her in the most entertaining way. I'm still sleeping here. Issei frowned a little. Just a little. Not enough to be noticed. Then you just verbally agreed to the contract I just made up. Congrats. Try to find a lawyer who can beat my mother. He had to pull his head back as the bunny girl propelled her head up, intending to head at his chin. She missed entirely but succeeded in lashing his face with her bunny ears, a move that didn't seem to bother him at all. Talking openly about vulgar things, demons like you disgust me, spat Maruko with detest. I never claimed I was a saint. Your mother is a monster. Maruko seethed, breathing through her teeth. Her disdain was as unmistakable as her distinctive rabbit ears, but Issei remained unshaken. True, Issei conceded with a shrug, unapologetic in his acknowledgement. Facts were facts, and there was no use denying them. Only disillusioned people in denial deny facts, and label it as an opinion. Everyone is a saint compared to her. Hey, even me. But to be fair, the old lady has toned it down. 20 years of relative calm in the family could do that, after all. Seeing that Maruko's flames were far from extinguished, Issei decided to let the topic simmer and potentially explode later. Alright, tell you what, I'm not gonna bother with this right now. There's some food downstairs, and my stomach is currently protesting the neglect. Plus, casual slavery is so not a hot topic anymore. Has she eaten yet? No idea, Yorichi shrugged. We just met. Half an hour give or take 5 minutes, but what about me? You just gonna shove your mentor aside like that just cause you no longer need her, huh boy? I no longer need a mentor. Could always use some extra dark-skinned sex friend. Her right eye twitched. She knew he was only ing around as he normally did. He had a remarkable talent for pushing her buttons. Come on. Feck off. I wanna get changed. I've friends downstairs waiting. That particular word raised an eye. Friends? Plural? Paid actors. Issei said dismissively as he walked towards his walk-in closet that was still mostly empty. You can stay here if you want, but really? Forcing yourself on a helpless demon? I'm hurt you don't stoop low enough to settle for me instead, Yoruin. As he shut the door behind him, Yorichi couldn't hold back a chuckle. TCH rowdy brat, break. After changing into a more comfortable combination of shirts and shorts, Issei emerged from his room. As tempted as he was to jump over the railings because he could do so without injury, he decided to respect the architect who had designed the stairs and the builders who had constructed them, taking the long route instead. The Reaper didn't have any trouble settling with the devils and the Yukai, and as expected, Ingvild was uncontainably excited from meeting a Grim Reaper, peppering her with various soul-related stuff that Issei didn't want to hear about because he was just hungry, and the smell of baked pizza dough and crisp pepperonis were too much to bear. Finally, Issei found himself at the conversation pit, an architectural masterpiece that incorporated built-in seating into a sunken section of the flooring, featuring a large collapsible square table piled high with boxes of delectable Italian-based delicacies. His seat of choice happened to be next to Yorichi, primarily because it was the closest unoccupied one. These are really good, then Yorichi said with a mouthful of cheese and black olive. Arcolettas? Yep, and shut your mouth when you eat. Issei rubbed his hands as he took a slice himself, seizing his slice with practiced precision. The golden cheese strings were his to command. He pulled them until they snapped, and then rolled them around the triangular piece of heaven before taking a bite. A contented sigh escaped him, a testament to the genius who had first conceived the idea of placing tomato sauce, cheese, and assorted meats atop a round piece of dough. Such culinary brilliance deserved nothing less than a monumental statue. As they indulged in the cheesy, heavenly delights of the pizza, Ingvild's world expanded, and she found herself wholeheartedly embracing the wonders of this new culinary experience. The world of pizza had opened its cheesy, saucy arms and welcomed her with a warm, doughy hug. His eyes peered around as he savored the slice. The demon bunny was sitting next to Yorichi as she should dash, currently bound still, and presently bruised, which pissed him off. His friends didn't seem to make any notion about her yet, but it was obvious Serorg was a bit disturbed by the sight. Issei also noted that Zest was perched on the other couch, slightly removed from the conversation pit, and this simply wouldn't do. Zest. Yes, master? The demoness briefly abandoned her plate, setting it down on the coffee table in front of her, and hastened toward him. Would you like anything? Yes, actually. I want you to sit here next to me. But, it's fine, Issei dismissed her concerns. They're like me, they don't care if you're a maid or a street sweeper. Sit down and eat here. Timidly, the maid complied, bringing her plate and walking over the pit. Please excuse me, young masters. No, it's fine, Serorg chimed in between mouthfuls, clearly savoring his second box of pizza. The Matavilman was so eager to eat that he pressed 2 slices together for efficient consumption. Also, why didn't you heal her yet? Issei inquired, his gaze shifting to Yorichi. Cause she'll go nuts if I do. She's surrounded by devils. She can't be that dumb. Yorichi simply shook her head. You'd be surprised, I tell you. Issei's observant eyes then drifted toward the demoness, who stared at the food before her, attempting to conceal her hunger. Issei had a knack for noticing such subtleties. Her grudge is with my mom, Issei explained, addressing both Yorichi and the demoness beside her. If she wants to settle it, then she shouldn't blast me or my friends. We're just a bunch of kids eating unhealthy foods. Yoruichi swallowed a mouthful before turning to Miruko. You hear that? You're not gonna hurt these innocent brats, would you? All eyes fell upon her, but the bunny-eared demon showed a gutsy smile. Wasn't planning on fighting these kids. Considering you faced Mrs. Demon head-on, I doubt you've ever planned to be starkly honest. Yoruichi commented. Issei fully agreed, wearing a she got a point expression. The rest of the group remained blissfully unaware of the cryptic conversation, with the nosiest member that was the Nekashu still preoccupied in freeing a piece of tuna stuck between her fangs. That being said, both Yoruichi and Issei perceived the demon's sudden silence. She was hiding some details from them, and he guessed that it was what Yoruichi was trying to do to kill her time, get the demon to speak, but that could be settled for later. Well, you heard her, Issei said with a light tone, bumping his shoulder against the Reaper aka his mother's sneaky, stabby cat. Let the rabbit girl eat, says I. The tension in the room seemed to increase as Yoruichi began unsealing the demoness' hands and legs, simultaneously healing her with some sort of Grim Reaper's reversal technique, a detail that Issei had temporarily forgotten. Serorg consciously paused his chewing. Ingvild watched the demon with a mix of worry and sparking excitement. Zest kept her unwavering gaze locked onto the other demon, poised to jump to her master's aid if needed. Meanwhile, both Issei and Kuroka continued to indulge in their pizza. Issei had confidence in Yoruichi's abilities, while Kuroka simply didn't give a shit if some bunny decided to get rowdy. The room hung heavy with unspoken words until Issei, ever the breaker of uneasy silences he wasn't a part of, decided to lighten the mood. Go on. Eat. If it's somehow poisoned, then just toss it over to the big guy. Miruko didn't bat an, extremely impressive, eyelash at the suggestion. She reached for a slice of pizza and devoured it without a second thought, displaying an admirable lack of caution. Serorg, however, furrowed his brows, a puzzle in his mind. How did you know I'm immune to poison? Issei raised his, countering. Clearly you haven't tasted her cooking. Yoruichi, the Reaper, took the jab gracefully, offering a nonchalant shrug of her shoulders. He's right after all. Or mine. Kuroka, in her typical straightforward manner, chimed in with a playful comment, reclining against her seat with an air of satisfaction and nonchalance. She even loosened the golden sash around her stomach for extra comfort. Can't cook for shit Nyan. Can't eat either. Serorg commented. You ate what? 2-3 slices? Kuroka, embodying her feline nature, purred with a hint of pride. I'm part cat, you see. Cats don't eat much, you know. What they do, however, is lays around a lot. Just like what I'm about to do. Yawning theatrically, Kuroka showcased her magical prowess by levitating herself into the air, utilizing a bit of control over the air and her own inventive spirit. She floated gracefully above the group on her invisible mattress, gliding toward an empty seat on her left. You'll get a stomach ache. Serorg warned, worse, you'll get fat. Ladies tend to worry over this kind of stuff, no? Bold of you to assume I'm a lady. Myaon, she stretched her back and legs with a languid grace. Bold of you to assume I'm a lady. Myaon stretching her back and legs with a languid grace like a cat would, mimicking a cat's morning routine, even stiffening her black tails for added effect. She then positioned a cushion under her chin for a comfortable resting spot and fixed her mischievous eyes on the bunny-eared demon. Did you know that cats hunt bunnies? Issei braced himself for what he had expected to be a hostile reaction from the demon rabbit girl, whose name still eluded him. To his surprise, she responded with a toothy grin. Some bunnies with a mean kick will fight back, while cats pick on the bunnies who can't. And bunnies who don't have thunder thighs. Kuroka yawned again, her amber eyes half-lidded now, blinking slowly until they shut. That's why we're cats, Nyan, cause we're smart, and stuff Mew. She dozed off within 5 seconds. A free soul, ain't she? Yoruichi quipped, somewhat impressed. Say, you haven't told me how you actually have friends, little Don. I told you earlier. Issei swallowed his food before continuing. Because he wasn't raised as a hooligan, I paid them. Paid them with free meals, I did. And let's not forget, I'm a world-renowned bundle of joy. Yoruichi decided to let that remark slide and turned her attention to the hulking figure of Serorg. So sigh, isn't it? How did you and the boy here become acquainted? I saved his life. Issei said flatly before Serorg could answer. Did you now? He helped me when I got lost, the Baal replied, validating her disbelief. Not all who wander are lost, just saying. You are the last person in hell to be allowed to say that. Issei muttered. Serorg only grinned, acknowledging the truth in Issei's words. She expected as much. Fateful encounter, eh? What about the kitten over there, Vivi? Issei scrubbed his neck. Said Devil was taking a sip of her glass of Coke, Immediately quivering as she felt the fizzes spread on her face, I walked in on her. Changing? Yeah, no, he said flatly. She was singing. Funny you mentioned that though. Did you know my mother TP'd me to the girls' changing room? Yorichi's eyes gleamed with interest. No, she did not. Yes, she did, Issei sniggered, got a whole barely clothed mob of chicks chasing after my head. I died, sadly. Fortunately, I lived. Shame, the Reaper quipped with a toothy grin, keeping an eye on the leporine demon beside her. I would have liked a more tragic end for you. What about the Catwoman? Feeling cheeky, Issei teased Yorichi. Feeling threatened? She's a bona fide catgirl, you know? Yorichi simply brushed off the comment. She's the only one I didn't bump into. She just waltzed right into our table and sorta tagged along and fit right in. Serorg bobbed his head in agreement. Kuroka really did just that. Yorichi couldn't help but express her surprise. That so? Man, what a ragtag bunch of misfits you have. A hulking devil without demonic power, a half-devil who sings with a giant pool of mana, an endangered yokai species with an equally impressive mana pool, and you, to top it all off. I'm honestly surprised, little Don. Might as well call you the Don now. Curious, Serorg inquired, what's the little Don from? Do you lead a crime family, Mr. Issei? Ingvild asked hopefully, having read a book regarding the organized crime syndicates. Can I become a part of it? I think I'd make a great consigliera, I hope. No, I don't lead a crime family, and good God, I'm only 19. Stop calling me Mr. Issei shook his head, a wry smile on his face, as he combed his fingers through his unruly chocolate-colored hair, inadvertently messing it up further. His bangs draped over one eye, a reminder that he needed a haircut to avoid looking homeless in the future. He's the boss lady's son, so it's natural. Yorichi said lightly as she stuffed her fifth slice into her cheeks. Don't you know? Ingvild's curiosity hung in the air like a cloud of confusion. Who is boss lady? Lady Isabel, of course. The Reaper droned, glancing at Miruko to make sure she didn't get triggered over the name. She didn't. The leporine demon paid no heed to her, and instead wolfed on the free meals. The bombshell about Issei's mother left Serorg and Ingvild completely flabbergasted. Serorg's pizza slice dropped back onto the cardboard as he stared at Issei with a mix of shock and disbelief. In contrast, Issei seemed untroubled by the revelation, his expression as nonchalant as ever. Serorg finally found his voice, his tone tinged with incredulity. Which Isabel? Yorichi replied with an air of sarcastic grandeur, listing her employer's never-ending list of titles one after another. The one and only, obviously, Dread Empress Isabel Arcoletta, first of her name, Unifier of Hell, Grand Marshal of the Legion of Terror, Bringer of the Dark, the Purifying Flame, the Scourge of Hell and plenty of other epithets and bull crap I can't be bothered to remember. Drainer of Hayate Gora's Pimp Juice, Mother of Hayate Issei, hopefully the last of his name. Only Yorichi and even the demon from earlier snickered from his adlib. The rest except Kuroka were staring at him like he had grown his third head, the second being Issei Jr. Alright, now no need to freak out, Issei attempted to defuse the tension. I've done Jack's hit compared to my mom. Dude, Serorg began, struggling to articulate his astonishment. What? Do you have any idea how big of a deal that is? Look. Just because I emerged from the of a tyrant doesn't necessarily mean I'm destined to be a tyrant myself. That's not the point. Unfortunately it is, Issei muttered, grabbing a tissue to clean his cheesy fingers. That's 90% of the reason as to why I'm here, is in a penthouse, has a personal maid, surrounded by snobby twits. The other 10% is me saying it. Unbeknownst to Issei, Miruko had fixed her gaze on him, determined to assess whether the son of the Dread Empress was a chip off the old block or a distinct individual. She carefully observed his nonchalant and relaxed interactions with his personal maid, his easygoing mannerisms with his friends, and the genuine respect they held for him. All signs seemed to suggest that he wasn't the monstrous figure she had initially imagined him to be, but for now, she should observe him closely first before forming her final verdict. Don't really matter though, Issei concluded his reflection with a more relaxed tone. I dig it here. Yorichi panned towards him. Oh? Rare of you to change your mind. I get to mess with pompous jerks legally, and everything is essentially free. And he had zest to accompany him during those lonely nights. The internet is bullet speed fast, and mom's not around to bitch at me when I'm being asocial. What's there to hate? As if fate had conspired to make his day even more interesting, the elevator chimed, and Issei immediately sensed the presence of several other devils, Rias and Aquino. Please excuse me, Master, Zest said after a polite bow, heading towards the elevator to address the devils. Ho boy. Issei muttered, barely containing his smile from becoming a full-fledged smirk. This keeps getting better. Alright, drinking game. If she tries to coax any of you into her peers, take a shot. For years, Rias had been opportunistic, patiently biding her time for the perfect moment to assemble her dream peerage. She had scoured the earth, observed countless rating games, honed her strategies, and sought out individuals with the potential to join her peerage, aiming to help them reach the pinnacle of the rating games. And today, she had finally found 7 of them, and half of them casually dining in her penthouse, hosted by none other than the demon whose infamy had soared after his first exhibition match this morning. Hi to Issei. Yo, Sanapi, Issei greeted her with a mock 2-finger salute, his tone drenched in dry sarcasm. Done watching brutes fighting brutes? Rias had to pinch herself to make sure she wasn't dreaming. Had Issei truly managed to recruit 3 of the best prospects of the new wave of students with nothing more than budget-friendly pizza? Who were those 2 dark-skinned demons sitting next to him? And did she call her Sanapi? A wave of confusion washed over her as a multitude of questions flooded her mind. Meanwhile, Akino offered a friendly wave and chimed in, Hiya again, Issei-kun, Seror-kun. She giggled as she approached the sunken conversation pit, hands clasped behind her back. Serorg reciprocated her greeting with another nod, while Issei simply acknowledged her with a nod of his head. Akino playfully commented, Ufufu, after all these years, you're still remarkably skilled at making new friends. Friends? The half-demon echoed, raising his brown brow as he glanced at the Baal. We're friends? Serorg responded with a nonchalant shrug. He hadn't known Issei for very long, but he figured it was best to play along with the banter. Ingvild, however, took Issei's words at face value and looked as if her world had suddenly collapsed under feet. We're not friends? No, of course we are. I was just, actually don't mind that. Issei sighed, a hint of annoyance flickering across his features. He hated having to explain his sarcasm or jokes, especially when they fell flat. He decided to let it slide and change the topic, raising a box containing a slice of the cheesy Italian delicacy toward his senior. Pizza? Well, it might not be the best choice if you're aiming to keep your figure in shape, though I doubt you need to worry about that anytime soon. Era? Are you flirting with me, Haida-kun? Akino teased him, a playful glint sparkling in her eyes. No, I'm mocking your perfect hourglass figure, senpai, Issei deadpanned, his delivery as lifeless as a heartless zombie. Pizza? No thank you, Akino replied politely, her gaze shifting to the unfamiliar girls sitting beside Issei. They appeared older and more mature than the rest of the group, catching her attention with their attractive appearance. Akino had an excellent memory and couldn't recall ever seeing the demon girl with white bunny ears before, which led her to conclude that they might be Issei's consorts, a term she found amusing due to its dubious connotations. With a mischievous smile, Akino continued, Yufufu, do you like busted tan-skinned girls, Issei-kun? Issei's response was quick and unapologetic. Yes. Yorichi nearly spat out her cola. Serorg choked on his pizza slice. Ingvild blinked and mentally noted Issei's preferences for future reference, and Akino giggled less reservedly as she sat down by his right-hand side, seeing that it was the only row that wasn't occupied by the devils or a lazing nekishu. Issei didn't even miss a single beat. His face and voice was as unbothered as ever. Nothing in the entire world seemed able to disturb his unnatural composure. Across the room, as the Gremry recouped herself from her stupor, she emerged from the hallway as she made her way towards the growing group. Briefly, she kept a wary eye towards the dark-clothed figure presently snoozing on the red velvet cushions, thankful that Kaneko wasn't with her. Akino was in the midst of introducing herself to the Leviathan and the 2 tan-skinned women. Rias hadn't yet seen their faces to recognize them, but when she finally laid eyes on the woman with dark purple hair, she could barely contain her excitement, and it took all her self-control not to let out an enthusiastic squeal. Wait, would you happen to be Yorichi Shihuin? The Dread Lightning? Rias stammered, her question more a result of disbelief than actual uncertainty. She was in awe to be in the presence of one of the deadliest Reapers recorded in the history of the underworld, who had served the Dread Empire. Said Reaper let off a disappointed whine. Aw, you know who I am. That's no fun. I was hoping I'd get to tease you a little bit. The confirmation of her identity earned a gasp-like squeal from Ingvild, whilst causing Serorg to choke on his drink just after he managed to swallow his pizza that was stuck on his throat. Whoa, easy there, tiger. Since Issei had been through this type of big reveal scene more times than he cared to count, he decided to shift his attention toward his personal maid, who had already returned to her post, expecting orders. While Issei was inclined to get off his seat and drag her back into the pit, he supposed that would make her too uneasy, especially with Rias present. Besides, his fingers were a bit cheesy, The captive leporine demon herself didn't seem to care much about the Gremmery's fangirling over her enemy, continuing to chug down her beverage and wolf down another portion of smoked beef pizza. I don't mean to be rude when I say this, Rias commented, trying to recover from her initial shock, but I never imagined you to be so conversational. If you don't mind me asking, Yoruichi shrugged, flashing a smirk. Serving the lady changes a woman. In what way? Rias asked with genuine curiosity, eager to keep the conversation going. She used to be white. That uncalled response earned himself a smack to the back of his head from Yoruichi. Mirko even-eyed the Reaper with surprise and suspicion, buying his bullshit. Serorg was practically destined to choke every 5 seconds by now, thumping his chest and frantically reaching for an unopened bottle of chilled Sprite. Aquino had to put a hand over her mouth to not laugh out loud while Rias was downright horrified. Ingvild, however, gasped in sincere surprise. I never thought Reapers were able to tan their complexion. "'Cause Reapers can't do that," Yoruichi clarified, glaring at Issei while also sporting a mischievous grin. Ignore what he said, this doofus was just blabbering. I was born this way, kitten. As Ingvild let out an understanding "oo," Issei took the opportunity to get up and wash his hands, but not before delivering another cheeky quip. It's true, she had that dusky hue in all parts of her body except for 2-3 spots, actually. A deep flush spread across Yoruichi's cheeks as she attempted to swat him again, only to hit empty air as Issei quickly exited his seat. He took the empty pizza boxes with him, and Zest trailed behind him, offering to carry the cardboard boxes, a suggestion Issei promptly declined by stating that his hands were not broken or detached from his shoulders. This response greatly horrified the diligent maid. Sheesh, that boy who raised him, seriously. Yoruichi grumbled, shutting up when she realized she was the culprit behind his quick-witted responses. 3 spots? Ingvild wondered aloud, her confusion painted across her face like a giant question mark. Not something you should learn, kitten, Yoruichi advised, putting a stopper on any further questions from the baffled Leviathan. Ingvild complied with a nod, deciding not to push the matter despite her insatiable curiosity. Yoruichi couldn't help but grin. Heh. At least someone's raised right. Oh, I hope so, Ingvild replied with a soft smile. My parents did their best to raise me right. Ah, Yoruichi cooed, giggling. Are you a mommy's girl or daddy's girl? Ingvild blinked, tilting her head to one side, causing her lavender locks to sway gently. Both? At least I would hope so. They have pictures where they hold me as a baby. I believe I am the baby, I hope. Her eyes filled with uncertainty, as Ingvild experienced her first case of an identity crisis. Both Yoruichi and Rias couldn't help but squeal with delight, eager to smother the girl with affection at the first available opportunity. Yo, I see, how'd you find this kid? She's not for sale, came his dry reply from somewhere around the back. Taking a seat beside Aquino, Rias scrambled for more questions. This wasn't very typical of her, but she couldn't help herself when sitting just a few feet away from a living legend, a human turned into a full-fledged reaper of souls. Although her brother, Serzex, was also considered a legend, he was different. He was born a super devil, while Yoruichi had originally been of human descent before selling her soul to the Dread Empress. If Rias fangirled over him, she could only imagine how Serzex would react, and she'd rather not find out. I'm curious, Yoruichi-san, Aquino spoke softly, what brings a reaper here? Yoruichi nodded toward the demon sitting next to her, jabbing her thumb. Babysitting this gyro of a rabbit. Rias just remembered about the leporine demon being there, and their supposedly extinct status. So this was what being starstruck felt like, made her silly and tunneled her vision. That wouldn't do. She was the heiress of Gremory. She had to maintain her tact and composure, which she had miserably failed at whenever Issei was in the same room as her. Oh. That reminds me, do you have a spare room somewhere round here, missy? Yoruichi inquired with a hopeful grin, perfectly fine by using her superstar status to gain decent treatment. Her nonchalant demeanor somehow made it sound like a casual request. Here? Certainly. Rias responded, suppressing her usual aversion to being called missy, especially by someone of Yoruichi's stature. She couldn't help but be somewhat biased toward the Dread Empress's most proficient headhunter. Would you be staying for long? And what type of room would you need? Couple of weeks, most likely, and a standard one, Yoruichi replied with a sly grin, her list of preferences sounding more like a high-end hotel room request. Running air conditioning, preferably a small fridge, big screen TV, something like the little Don's bedroom will do. She chuckled at her own whimsy. Separate beds though. I ain't getting kicked in the face when I sleep. Murako couldn't help but grin at the idea of separate beds. It seemed like a plan worth considering, if only she had the inclination to be cowardly enough to attack someone in their sleep. I'll have it arranged. Rias agreed, happy to oblige now that she had gained a bit of approval from the legendary Reaper. Rias went for the matter that had been niggling her. If it's not too intrusive to ask, who is the demon next to you? My prisoner. Yoruichi replied sunnily, sporting her grin that clearly stated this bitch be mine. Maruko, although somewhat disgruntled, wisely refrained from taking any drastic actions that would raise alarms among the others. Well, technically she's his slave. You're gonna give her the wrong impression. Issei's voice rang out from the back of the room. Yoruichi clicked her tongue. TCH. I thought you don't care about how people see you. When someone insists on adding slave owner to my already grimy reputation, I kinda have to. Issei retorted, clearly not amused. The Reaper rolled her golden eyes, unimpressed. Well, she's whatever he said she is. He's her boss. Ain't nobody my boss, Maruko declared defiantly, licking the tomato sauce off her thumb. The red stain under her lips gave the impression of a cartoonishly replicated droplet of blood until she licked it clean. Yeah. Ain't nobody is your boss because he's a somebody. Yoruichi yapped, adding a bit of linguistic critique to her response. Double negatives, bunny ears. Better not to use them. She then shrugged off the demon's glare and turned her attention back to Rias. She won't cause any problems. All these are your properties, so any damage done is done to you, not the Dread Empress. Acknowledging the jab, which was a clever way to make sure she wouldn't start a commotion, Maruko grumbled, I got it already. I see. Rias found herself relieved. She believed she had a good sense of people and their personalities, and it didn't seem like the demon was the deceitful type who would go back on her word. Additionally, she highly doubted that a demon, near extinction or not, could pose a threat to the Death Master. Is there anything else you'd like, Lady Yoruichi? Yes. For you to stop referring to me as a lady, Yoruichi requested, cringing at the idea. Please don't my lady me or any of those nobly paraphernalias. Really unsuited for me, princess. Makes my skin crawl. Rias nodded humbly, appreciating the directness. What do we call you then? Asked Serorg, who now had finally finished eating or choking on his meal. It doesn't sit right to just casually talk with a person who's done heaps. It's fine, Yoruichi insisted with a wave of her hand. Just call me Yoruichi or come up with a clever pet name if you like, as long as it don't rub me the wrong way. I don't care. Pet name? Ingvild parroted, glancing at the buff-eared devil for explanation. But Ms. Yoruichi isn't a pet. What does that mean? Serorg stumbled on the explanation. He wasn't particularly skilled at handling these kinds of conversations. It's like a special nickname, I think. Akino might be better at explaining it. Era. A question isn't a hot potato you can toss around to other people, Saikuen, Akino chided playfully. Ingvild, still curious, turned her attention to Akino with an inquisitive expression. It's a nickname, Ingvild-chan. Often it's a cute one given to you by your family or friends. Does she have one? Vivi, the Bale replied, her face lighting up as she realized that she did indeed have a pet name. Ingvild looked less confused and twice as happy and pleased with this explanation. Vivi Akino whispered the name, savoring how it rolled off her tongue. She couldn't help but smile, finding the nickname fitting for Ingvild. MHMHM short and sweet. How cute. Thank you. Rias found herself smiling too. Ingvild's innocence and charm were undeniable, and Rias couldn't help but feel protective of her. She was starting to feel anxious about how Ingvild would fare in her new school, especially when surrounded by individuals who were barely half as reliable as Serorg and often quick to pass judgment on others. Issei, on the other hand, was a unique case. He had his own set of principles and never let the opinions of others shame him, but he also had a strong moral code that he stuck to. While he might not have been the top student academically, he had managed to maintain a decent record with his friends and classmates. He had never actually misbehaved in a way Sona would consider as downright heinous aside from his peeping tendencies during his first year of course, and had a decent record with his friends and classmates. For humans, it could even be said he had lived his high school days in the most satisfying way, never caring about his studies too much, but still cared enough about others that many would try to invite him to an outing, which he almost always rejected because of his hobbies. But for demons, Issei was rather mediocre. It still boggled her mind how a talented person like him would settle for mediocrity. Or so she thought until she stepped in her penthouse and saw he had even drawn Kaniko's devious older sister into his whatever he intended to create with these peoples. Surely he didn't befriend them without a reason. He must have developed a set of goals in his mind, and that was how Rias misinterpreted his actions yet again. While Rias and Akino were busy acquainting themselves with Issei's unexpectedly expansive social circle, the demon Lord Ling and his personal demoness maid found themselves in the impressive penthouse kitchenette. The kitchen boasted pristine white cupboards, sleek countertops, and an array of appliances, including a modern electric stove with an oven, a coffee maker, a microwave, and other gadgets that would make any culinary enthusiast drool. 2 fridges, each with triple doors, stood like sentinels filled with a month's worth of provisions for the exclusive penthouse residents. A veritable playground for foodies. The kitchen layout formed a U-shape, with the counters facing the sliding glass doors leading to the penthouse's patio. Outside, an extravagant outdoor oasis awaited, complete with a pool, jacuzzis, a lounge area, and several other amenities that Issei probably wouldn't be using anytime soon. As Issei vented his frustration about Zest's overly subservient demeanor, the Demoness maid struggled to see eye to eye with him on the matter. But I'm a maid, master. I'm a servant. It's my obligation to serve those above me. All right, Issei sighed dramatically, pressing the heel of his palm against one eye as if he had just encountered a mind-boggling paradox. Since you're so relentlessly committed to downplaying your own status, let's put it this way then. You are my personal assistant, yes? Not Rias, not anyone else's, right? Zest nodded hesitantly, uncertain about where this conversation was heading. Then you're mine, he proclaimed with the conviction of a conqueror staking his claim. You belong to me, not them. Not Rias, not Serorg, not Ingvild. Me. Are we on the same page so far? Why yes, master. The maid timidly muttered, glancing down her clasped hands over her waist, avoiding her master's eyes. Not because that was how she was trained to do, but because she was a little bit scared. Then, my dear Zest, be a maid solely for me, Issei declared firmly, his tone carrying the weight of a royal decree. Of course, you'll still handle all the household duties alongside the other housekeepers, as that's part of your job description. You'll cook, clean, buy groceries, and share my bed, I won't deny you that. However, when it comes to my friends, Rias guests, or any other visitors, don't go overboard in your civility. You're a maid, but you're not their maid. If they start asking questions, just inform them that your master is an overly possessive, jealous little prick. I can't say that. Zest's lemony green eyes widened with shock, and she scolded herself for raising her voice, even if it was done in surprise. She averted her gaze, focusing on her clasped hands over her waist. Why, master? Was I trained incorrectly? Did I make a mistake? She murmured, am I a subpar servant? No. You're not taught wrong. Issei exhaled a sigh, leaning back against the edge of a counter. And no, you didn't do anything wrong, and you're not a bad maid. Too good at it, if anything. I'm telling you this for future references when the guests you have to attend happen to be assholes. Zest raised her head tentatively, her eyes searching for answers in his words. I see, but why, master? Because I don't like casual social disparity, Issei replied matter-of-factly, his gaze fixed on a point in the distance. Just because you're a maid, it doesn't instantly mean you have to be a doormat for everyone, like you owe them something just to do your job. Master, I'm a low-born dem. You can be a king or a street sweeper, and it'll be the same, Issei interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. You can be a hero destined to pull some magical sword out of a rock, and I'd still tell you the same thing. It's not you, Zest. Like I've told you many times, it's just me. I'm not mad at you, in case you're wondering, he continued softly. Zest flinched as he patted her cheek and then let his hand linger, his thumb caressing her gently. It was a touch devoid of grease or cheese, a small, tender gesture. I'm just mad that I'm mad about this society, but can't be arsed enough to try and change it. In other words, I'm just bitchin'. Typical teenagey stuff. Zest remained silent, her gaze locked onto the floor, her cheeks now tinged with a faint blush. She didn't mind his occasional affectionate gestures. In fact, she found solace in them. Issei had a knack for these tiny, intimate actions that spoke volumes. He would stroke her cheek with his knuckles, brush her lips with his thumb, poke her white bangs with a finger, all of it done in a way that conveyed care and comfort, more than mere physical contact ever could. In all honesty, she cherished these moments. Her being his maid wasn't the reason behind her delight either, although it was the reason she was careful about harboring any strong feelings towards him other than faithfulness. Not that her attempts were particularly effective. She liked them because they felt caring and soothing in a way more profound than she had ever hoped to receive from a master of all people. Have I ever mentioned if your name's related to your eyes? Issei asked casually, his gaze narrowing as he studied her irises. Zest because zest of lemon? You know, since your eyes look like one. Color-wise, that is. Your horns have that lemony yellow tint to them too. I'm afraid I do not know for certain, Master Zest stammered, her blush deepening. She didn't want to avert her gaze because her master was scrutinizing her eyes, but she also didn't want to meet his. fearing he might notice the warmth spreading across her cheeks. Issei was well aware of her flustered state, of course. He rarely missed anything when he decided to pay attention, even when it seemed he wasn't paying any. Always be the wolf in sheep's clothing in the gathering of sheep, was what his mother had taught him. No, she wasn't referring to skinning someone and wearing their hide as camouflage. That could be done without the need for skinning. The Dread Empress taught him that so he could cleverly choose his targets. However, Issei was well aware of other benefits that didn't necessarily involve dead or manipulated sheep. Issei was a master of navigating life's complexities with all the subtlety of a bull in a china shop. He was well aware of her blooming feelings for him that were growing by the day, like a weed in a well-tended garden, but he preferred to let her come to terms with it on her own. Would he accept her affection? Absolutely. Would he reciprocate? Well, that was a different story. He had seen firsthand the venomous nature of love, at what it did to his mother, and frankly, compared to all the heinous crimes the Dread Empress had done, being absurdly love-struck was the only thing that terrified him. But Issei wasn't one to waste precious brainpower worrying about potential future decisions. He firmly believed that future Issei could deal with that headache when the time came. Besides, he wasn't about to lose sleep over the possible ramifications of his innocent gestures. He certainly wasn't the type to overanalyze everything, unlike those protagonists in cheesy romance flicks who spent half the film debating whether or not to hold hands that they ended up doing all. Instead, he'd much rather focus on reclaiming his mother's throne from the dustbin and becoming a formidable Dread Emperor, as some crazed seers had predicted. That sounded way more appealing than being the guy who sat around, played sad songs, and pushed potential partners away with his overthinking. Issei had just finished a bout of casual cheek-patting on Zest, which seemed to be his go-to move for easing any tension. He glanced at her lemony green eyes and the subtle yellow tint of her horns, connecting dots that his quirky mind was notorious for connecting. Well, Issei sniffed as he drew his hand away, right after patting her warm cheek a few times more. They're nice. Sunny and refreshing. Zesty. I've always been a fan of lemon-flavored things. Lemonade, lemon pie, lemon-scented cleaning supplies. You name it, I probably like it. So, it's only fitting that my personal demoness maid has a dash of lemony zest in her. With a tender smile, he reached out to touch her lips with a fingertip, sending another wave of warmth coursing through her. A dash of lemony zest in my life. Zest's lips curled into a little smile, her blush deepening as she felt her chest flutter with affection. Thank you, master. Issei couldn't resist his playful teasing, his dry wit dancing on the edge of mischief. Wish you could stop thanking me for everything, though, he mused, his gaze briefly flitting toward a nearby wall. I could breathe, and you'd thank me for it. Could just say your name, and you'd thank me for it, but at least I know your name. As they exchanged these light-hearted words, the leporine demon, Maruko, made her entrance into the kitchen area. Zest was taken aback but pleasantly surprised by her master's sharp observation. Dang, you're sharp, Maruko said in appraise, turning out to be pleasantly surprised rather than the startled kind of surprised. Ms. Thunderthighs, Issei said, nodding as he acknowledged her with a sly grin. His eyes darted briefly to Maruko's crooked rabbit-like ears, which bore an amusing resemblance to horns, a stark contrast to Zest's horn that resembled a rabbit's. Maruko, she introduced herself, flashing a toothy grin, her perfect teeth on full display. Maruko or Mirko? It don't matter to me, Issei or Issei. Doesn't matter to me either, he replied in kind, his dry humor ever present. Hey, you're cheeky. I like ya, Maruko responded with a snigger, clearly enjoying their banter. I overheard ya talkin'. Issei batted a lingering glance on her long ears, then back to her extremely red eyes. Understandable. Hard not to, I imagine. Maruko shrugged off his teasing with an easygoing demeanor, as she headed toward the sink to wash her fingers. You meant what you said, don't ya? Your bit about how you treat her? I always mean what I say when I mean it, Issei replied with a hint of enigmatic vagueness, but really, he was just being stupid. Vague replies didn't normally sit well with her, but Maruko let his slide. She didn't need his confirmation to make up her mind about him. You're pretty weird, Issei, she added as the running water stopped. She dried her hands at the hand dryer more commonly found at shopping malls' bathrooms, or an overly rich penthouse. Woulda never guessed your mother would be a monster. The statement was said casually with no intent to hurt him, and Issei had a mild response to it. She was just being honestly blunt after all. Zest, however, wasn't going to let anyone speak ill of her master or his family before her. Yeep! She was stopped by a finger poke to her horn, causing her to shiver and her demonic power to dissipate. Chill out, Issei advised his loyal maid. No one gets to choose who gave birth to them, unfortunately. Maruko snorted a sharp exhale of air. You're a goofy guy, ain't ya? Only during the day, Issei replied with a wry grin, leaving behind a slightly baffled Maruko. What about the night? I wank, Issei nonchalantly announced as he strolled away, heading back into the corridor and rejoining the group. Zest followed closely behind, her cheeks flushed as she tried to keep her composure. Meanwhile, Maruko was left with a perplexed expression, pondering the unfamiliar term she had just heard for the first time in her life as a demon. As Maruko grappled with her thoughts, she contemplated the decision looming ahead. Should she inform Issei about the lurking dangers? Her vendetta was against the Dread Empress, and her lackeys who had torched her village and taken her family, not her son. But could she trust him with this knowledge? The uncertainty gnawed at her, frustrating her with indecision. Maruko hated this. Being indecisive. It was annoying and a sign of weakness. It meant she wasn't fully prepared to make a judgment call. Keeping secrets was equally vexing, especially when she was surrounded by potential enemies. Death didn't scare her, but dying without achieving anything was her greatest dread. Opting to give Issei more time before revealing anything, Maruko retraced her steps to the living area, setting aside her clouded thoughts for later consideration. Break. The dark sun was setting, casting a warm glow through the room, and Kuroka had just woken up from her afternoon beauty nap. Stretching her limbs and tail, she flicked her big feline ears and rubbed her eyes, gradually shaking off the remnants of sleep. As she glanced around the room with its strangely high ceilings and giant shutters, she swiftly recalled her location. Pushing herself upright, she scratched the crown of her head. Her unmagicked kimono slipped off her chest slightly, prompting her to adjust it. Where the hell is everybody? She mumbled aloud. Had she been awake half an hour earlier, she would have known how the lively place had turned into a graveyard and wouldn't be left wondering why. Her ears perked up as she heard a distinct click from the second floor, and Issei emerged from his room, holding a peculiar squarish bottle that seemed to be missing its contents. Oh, he muttered, his tone casual. I thought you died. Sleep is just a trial for dying, so you're not wrong. HNNNNGGG. Kuroka groaned as she stretched her hands up to the skies, severely risking the dropping of her, and it dropped. Lacking the magic needed to keep in place, the red trim of her black kimono fell off her chest. He stared at her. Kuroka's, obviously. She didn't care. Nice racks. I know, she hummed, nonchalantly tugging her clothing back into place with a bit of restraining magic. Where's the rest, Nyan? Issei shrugged as he made his way downstairs. Shopping for clothes, hanging out, socializing. For Yoru, Miru, Vivi, and hopefully Zest. They tried to wake you up but you swiped at them in your sleep. Who? She hoped it wasn't Ingvild. Rias. Kuroka grinned mischievously. Oh goody. Bad blood? Issei asked, noticing Rias' frequent glances at the Nekashu, almost as if she were cautious of her for some reason. Nah, Kuroka purred, adjusting herself on the sofa to get more comfortable. She's just so stucky-uppy. Fun to tease and stuff, Nyan. True, Rias wasn't inherently evil or manipulative. She simply exuded that princess-like aura and consistently provided entertaining reactions to his teasing. Issei couldn't help but smile at the thought as he walked past the pit, disposing of his empty whiskey bottle into a trash chute that silently transported it to a garbage bin located at the very bottom of the massive dorm. Nyanya, Kuroka yawned. She blinked a few times as she plopped down back to the sofa, resting her cheek on the cushion. Did everyone leave Naya? Yep. What, even Sai? He went to the gym. She huffed, giggling. Of course he would. Kuroka pondered for a few seconds, and an idea crossed her mind. Did you stay behind so I won't be left alone? Issei stopped beside a giant abstract painting, a chaotic explosion of colors that appeared as though a colossal paintbrush had gone wild on a canvas of pristine white. He contemplated the artwork as he responded, more like because I don't like shopping since I stand around wishing I wasn't shopping. I hate crowds. I want to chill off after a long day of socializing because my social battery has flatlined. But sure. Let's go with that. I'm damn right. Kuroka rubbed her eyes lazily, yawning softly. What are you doing, Naya? Issei didn't miss a beat in his response, wondering when you'll leave. From this place? Never. She flashed a mischievous smile, the drowsy look in her eyes making her appear even more seductive. Well, don't let me hold you. Unfortunately, it didn't have much effect on Issei since he was immune to seduction. Hey, wait, where you going? My room. Answered Issei without stopping. I want to finish my movie and then sleep. Kuroka smoothly suggested, what if you do all of that but with me? He paused and turned around, drawing a grin from her. However, his response promptly killed her attempt. How much? Kuroka looked offended for a moment. What do you mean how much? As in how much are you willing to pay me? Issei clarified. Oh. Of course. Her face softened and her smile returned, glad that Issei wasn't that kind of guy and was just being a snarky bastard. Will, my head was valued around 2 millions. Body probably 4 times more. Nyan. Because it's 4 times not as empty? Kuroka threw a sideward glare, but her smirk revealed her amusement. Many had tried to use humor to win her over, but most had failed. Those who had failed usually realized it once they bought her a meal or gave her an expensive gift, which she promptly pawned the next day. Knowing that Issei hadn't even tried yet still seemed to succeed would likely piss off those sad suckers. And as he continued walking upstairs, like he was playing hard to get those she knew it was just him being himself, her interest in him seemed to increase. Not gonna invite me to your room, Nyan? She purred, propping herself back up. No one else is around, just you and me in this absurdly wealthy apartment unit. We're both attractive people with free-spirited natures of age where we know what we want, good chemistry, good integrity. Highly unlikely to be awkward or needy after a round of casual sex or two if you're that good, Naya. If you aren't, I'm gonna leave you mid and never talk to you again, Nyan. Issei didn't stop until he was in front of his bedroom, but he had a smirk on his face the entire walk. Attractive people, he commented, making a face. You. Kuroka grinned and, using her magic, floated herself to his level, hovering just by the glass safety railing. You're so witty, aren't you, Hayate? She purred with half-lidded eyes, flashing a smug smirk. I'm wondering if that's you putting up an act to be liked or if that's really you. He raised an eyebrow. Didn't you just say I have good integrity? I did, she replied, smiling smugly. She admired the fact that he wasn't offended by her jibe. Now I'm questioning it, Naya, and by ing me, you think you can find the answer. Pretty much, Nye, Kuroka shrugged. Better make your mind quick, Nyan, 'cause I'm starting to lose interest. Well, too bad. I'm watching something. Kuroka blinked, and tilted her head sideways. What you watchin'? And if you say not you, I'll smack your face. 22nd Jump Street. Felt that it's appropriate, Issei replied. He considered the movie's university setting, although he doubted he would encounter any undercover idiots during his time at this academy for battle-thirsty weirdos. Or pure weirdos like him. Huh. A Hollywood movie, Kuroka mused, wiggling her ears. I thought you'd be some weeb. You Japanese people have weird cartoons. I watch those when I'm feeling weebish. I have a very broad taste in movies and everything, really. He wasn't lying or bragging either. With a foot, he pushed open his bedroom door. A waft of chilly air from the AC unit immediately grazed against her skin, causing Kuroka to shiver. She hugged her naked upper arms as she peeked into his bedroom. Are you a penguin? We penguin, yes, Issei replied wryly. I'm a Japanese subspecies fighting extinction. Her mischievous glint returned to her eyes and face. That makes the two of us, Nyan, her lips curled into a smiling grin, akin to a Cheshire cat but less creepy and more irresistible, less feline and more humanoid. Do you know there are only 2 Nekisha left in this entire underworld, Nyan? Did the rest happen to visit China? Kuroka snickered in response, clearly not expecting that retort. With a satisfied, victorious smirk, Issei retreated into his room. Wait. She glided over the railing, settling her bare foot on the icy marble tiles, and tugged on his shirt. I want to watch some movies. You can be my cuddle pillow warmer thing, penguin. He glanced past his shoulder. How much? I'll let you feel my for 10 seconds. Double or nothing, Issei dared. Nye, fine, Kuroka grinned, waltzing into the fridge he called a bedroom. She might come to like this guy even more than she previously thought. The fact that he had a ridiculously lavish bedroom, perfectly suited for her to laze in, might only play a role in that. The room was dark, with the only light emanating from the giant plasma TV hanging at the opposite end of his massive bed. Dang. That's a huge TV, Kuroka muttered. Compensating for something, I see, Naya? Yeah, he said with a look as he flung himself into his bed, bouncing twice. I'm compensating for my tic-tac dick. On the plus side, it'll freshen your breath. Her laughter erupted into full-blown mirth, echoing through the spacious room as Kuroka clutched her stomach. She carelessly dropped her golden beads onto the plush carpet, where they nestled amidst the luxurious fibers. Then, with all the grace of a carefree feline, she flung herself onto Issei's bed, making herself right at home on his side. Kuroka quickly grabbed a thick, velvety blanket, cocooning herself in its expensive, cozy embrace. The blanket seemed to swallow her whole, leaving only her smirking face exposed. Meanwhile, on the giant TV screen, 2 unfamiliar Caucasians were making their way through what appeared to be a warehouse. As they blabbered some words in English, Kuroka tossed the pillow onto Issei's lap. With the nonchalant ease of someone who had made herself comfortable in countless places, She rested her head upon the cushion, sinking into its plush embrace. No subtitles? Worldwide-san, aren't you Nyan? Mr. Worldwide. She was attempting to pronounce Mr. Worldwide, though her playful mockery was not lost on Issei. The complexities of language held no sway over demons, devils, angels, and the myriad other supernatural entities who had existed since time immemorial. Yokai and their subspecies were among the unfortunate few who hadn't been granted the convenience of linguistic transcendence. But where there were obstacles, magic often provided solutions. Just use magic to translate it in your head. Yeah, but then the words won't match their mouth movements, Nyan, Kuroka grumbled. Pisses me off. Issei agreed on that. With the push of a button on the universal remote, bright white moon runes materialized at the bottom of the screen, offering a convenient translation for this Japanese-speaking feline of his. Surprisingly, Kuroka found herself engrossed in the remaining 30 minutes of the movie, silently regretting not having watched it from the beginning. She observed that Issei rarely spoke unless it was in the form of a witty comment, or a burst of laughter, which was a blessing. Otherwise, she might have been tempted to shut him up herself, probably with a well-placed smack to his mouth and a stern command to shut the up so she could enjoy the movie. Issei, however, remained focused on the movie rather than her, an unexpected bonus in her eyes. She had no inclination to engage with pushovers or those who thought they could be sly by attempting to initiate physical contact. She'd never consider sleeping with pushovers or people who thought they were being subtle by rubbing her thighs or shuffling their hands to incidentally brush her sideboobs. A flick of her magic, and they would drift off into a deep slumber, leaving their face and body vulnerable to her whimsical artwork, usually involving a permanent pink marker. As the credits began to roll, she sat up on his lap, facing him, her hands resting on his shoulders. She noticed that despite his lean appearance, his shoulders were surprisingly sturdy. Issei's expression shifted from mild surprise to amusement as he commented, "You're still clinging to that sex solves everything philosophy, aren't you, Nyan?" Kuroka playfully swatted his face with one of her tails. "Don't copy me. Besides, all that pizza made me thirsty." "Can't help it, Nyan. That actually made sense, and I don't like that you're making sense." "What do you mean?" "I always make sense," Kuroka tittered. The tee-hee kind of titter as she moved, rippling water to sit on his lap, careful to not get her ears wet. Issei had never been one to shy away from physical closeness, especially when it made his heart and soul feel good. Besides, Kuroka smelled delightful, a captivating blend of femininity and her own unique scent. She possessed both beauty and cuteness in equal measure, complemented by her quirky personality. She was a master at leveraging her strengths and understood how to use them to her advantage. Kuroka's skin was fair and smooth, with curves in all the right places, giving her a perfect hourglass figure. While she might have been a bit shorter than some, she easily could have passed as a photo model for the Academy's fashion magazine. Without her loose-fitting black kimono, she appeared smaller, yet more adorably attractive than overtly seductive. She pressed her back against his surprisingly fit chest, seemingly unconcerned with the lower half of their bodies. Her only intention at the moment was to enjoy some after-sex cuddling. She felt surprisingly mellow compared to her usual self, both when she was rocking her hips and otherwise. It seemed that her sexual desires had been thoroughly satisfied, leaving her in this endearing, contented state. As they nestled together, the world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them wrapped in the warmth of each other's presence. Content in the afterglow of their intimate moment, Kuroka shifted slightly, her twin tails causing a minor inconvenience. It was as if her tails had their own opinions on the conversation, and they weren't shy about sharing them. She hummed noncommittally, shifting a bit since her twin tails were in the way. "Nay, I see," she began, her tone playfully curious. "When did you first get Ed?" Issei drew in a breath, filling his lungs with the hot steam of the bathtub, and exhaled as he delivered his well-thought-out answer with poignant precision. "Since I was born, most likely." Kuroka let out an exasperated sound and swatted him playfully across the face with her damp tail, lacking any real force. It was more of a swab rather than a slap, really. "Answer seriously for once, you sarcastic twit," he obliged, recalling, "Let's see, I first had sex about a week ago when I arrived here." That caught her interest. "Really, Naya? I thought guys like you lose virginity at high school or earlier." Nyan. Issei explained his perspective. "Yeah, well, I'd rather avoid commitment when all I want to do is watch movies, play games, and be a deadweight to both society and my parents. I got into an elite high school, and this is not a brag, I assure you," he emphasized. "Elite high school girls are riddled with hormones and get clingy if the person they want to date says I love you. They get hella delusional after someone puts their pee-pee in their coochie. The next thing you know, they're asking you to spend every weekend with them and getting upset if you don't have a schedule specifically for them. Kuroka listened intently, intrigued by his perspective. Really now? That, or maybe nobody wanted to me. Pfhh. The Nekasha snorted, a snort that quickly grew into a full-blown laughter. Most people might have been offended, but Issei joined in, finding amusement in his own candid and humorous take on the situation. After all, laughter was the best way to navigate the sometimes awkward waters of post-coital conversation. As their laughter subsided, Kuroka wiped her tears away, still wearing a lingering smile. Ah joy, she sniffled, her eyes twinkling. Oh you I like? This might be bad, Issei Nyan. I might want to have babies with you. We can have sassy little Nicodemon human hybrids of our own. And someone will make a fanfiction out of it, he added, sounding half amused and half terrified at the prospect, his thoughts inevitably drifting to the wild world of fan art and fan fiction. Kuroka tilted her head this time, glancing past her sleek shoulder. What's that? Fictions written by wishful scums, Issei replied bluntly. Mostly characters shipping and terrible writing. Would not recommend going there. And I don't like reading anyway. Unsurprising. Reading is boring. She played a frown. Yes, I am ignorant. Anything that isn't my hobby is thereby boring. Issei opted not to engage in a debate about reading preferences. He wasn't keen on needless arguments, and saw no point in defending literature when he wasn't much of a bookworm himself. Besides, he had no desire to be that one guy who couldn't take a joke or a playful comment without turning it into a debate, seemingly always asking for a high five to the face with a brick. What are your hobbies, then? He inquired, his chin resting atop her soft, ebony hair, nestled comfortably between her distinctive feline ears. Sleeping, Nyan, Kuroka purred with the ever-present mischievous glint in her amber eyes. She playfully tickled the sides of his face with the delicate movement of her large feline ears. And being adorable. I'd say sex too, but only when it's good. You're better at being adorable. I know, Naya. Her expression changed, and Issei could practically hear the mental record scratch as her smugness flipped to annoyance. Say that you don't mean it. I don't. He didn't need to look to see what face she was making from his simple, but honest, reply. He knew of her smudginess moments after their first meeting, however. He appreciated the fact that she didn't respond with exaggerated fluster or cutesy anime-style reactions to his words. What if sex not good? He asked with a caveman level of grammar. Bite off there? Kuroka grimaced but couldn't help giggling at his crude remark. You know! She shuddered at the thought. Well, for starters, you wouldn't be having me here cuddling with you. You'd be drowning or lying on the floor, unconscious, buck naked, with a doodle or two on your face courtesy of a bright pink permanent marker. I'd even leave a signature. I like a virgin. And for the chumps who just go at it like a boring, unsexual woodpecker, it hurts when I'm not aroused enough, you know. Issei nodded, understanding the importance of communication in the bedroom. Could try telling them. I did, Kuroka replied with frustration. I said stop, but they thought I was being kinky. Those cocky bastards, it's like my tone wasn't clear enough. She muttered in disgust. Whack them in the face, I did. Jiu-jitsu paired with Tuki is a very convenient skill to have. You know, you could like, pow, and they're knocked out for the rest of the day. Issei shut his right eye as her fist landed on his cheek. It didn't have any power, and it gave him a chance to be crafty, as he moved his head slightly and kissed her fingers. A move that didn't go unappreciated as Kuroka smiled. MHM smooth criminal, aren't you, Nyan? Perhaps. Or maybe I just don't want you to knock me out cold. No, you're good, Naya, Kuroka tittered, poking Issei's cheek, which was visibly less plump than hers. You stopped when you were being too rough, so thanks for that. Issei's expression shifted, caught between the relief of knowing he hadn't crossed a line and the frustration that Kuroka had to experience such situations at all. Do you realize how sad that was? Yeah, I nearly got molested. Don't you pity me, Kuroka warned, her glare revealing the pain of reliving her past as she glowered past him. Son of a bitch tried to blackmail me. He threatened to touch my baby sister. I killed her. Exploded his heart with a little bit of magic. You should have seen his face, Nyan. Issei fell into thoughtful silence. There were times for frivolous remarks, and then there were times for genuine consideration. His mother had ensured that he understood the difference between the two, especially after an incident involving his father and a noodle incident. After a few seconds he carefully broached the topic. I'm guessing you don't want to hear I'm sorry? No pee, Kuroka quipped, her mood shifting back toward her usual playful banter. Saying sorry is for wits who can't stop apologizing every 5 seconds. Issei couldn't help but agree with her stance on excessive apologies. Instead, he opted for an alternative approach. What about a thank you for sharing with me? Her eyes widened in surprise. She tilted her head slightly away from him to get a better look at his face. After a moment of contemplation, Kuroka muttered with a quirky smile, "Feels weird when you're being all softy." "Excuse you, I am a very gentle person," Issei declared flatly, deciding to drop his rare moment of being all softy, as it made him feel like he'd committed a petty crime. As Kuroka had put it herself, it felt weird and uncharacteristic. "Alright, doofus." Kuroka playfully pinched his bottom lip with her lips, giving it a quick lick before releasing it. She knew she would like him, but now her initial interest in him had evolved into something deeper, something that stirred her emotions in unexpected ways. And it scared her. But huffing that fear away, at least for a moment, just for now, just so she could have this moment for once, she locked eyes with him, her gaze intense and searching, revealing more than mere curiosity. Issei couldn't help but smirk, his brown eyes shining in the bright bathroom light. His smirk had a touch of mischief, but beneath it, there was something warmer, a depth that hinted at hidden layers of his personality. His eyes were a deep, earthy brown like the earth after a heavy rain. But there was something else in them than just playfulness. Beneath the sassy layer lay something warm and gentle, the same way a pot holds layers of deep soil. Rough on the surface but comfortably soft underneath. The roots were held in place the same way his dark, liquidy eyes held so onto his secrets. Issei allowed a small smirk as he watched hers in turn. A pair of thin oval pupils surrounded by golden amber-like, reminding him of the Jack Daniels he just threw away an hour ago. Playful and inviting like a glass of whiskey, her gaze had the uncanny ability to whisk away his worries, replacing them with a warm, intoxicating feeling. That was when Kuroka leaned in for another kiss. It felt different this time. Almost innocent. It wasn't so much of a kiss than a gentle show of appreciation and perhaps a hint of adoration, emotions she perhaps had rather kept hidden. Her eyes softened, revealing a vulnerable side, someone who yearned for love but was also afraid of the pain it could bring. Issei glimpsed this deeper layer within her, a contrast to the mischievous troublemaker he had encountered earlier. A blink, and her dazed look faded. She put on her smile, turning away from him and resting on his chest. "Well, now you get me being all weird." Kuroka giggled, reeling back all of her emotions that nearly spilled as she put on her smile, turning her back around him again as she rested on his chest. She returned to her playful self, but Issei had seen another side of her, one that craved connection yet was hesitant to fully embrace it. "My weirdness is infectious," Issei snickered. He wasn't going to press it. He understood that some things were better left unsaid for now, and she didn't trust him enough to tell, and that was fine for him. Anyway, not that I need to them to tell if they're good at it anyway. Yeah, it's easy to tell someone by foreplay, you know? That'd leave a huge dent on their pride. What are your pre-red flags then, sex ed sensei? Nya, let's see. Kuroka lifted her leg above the water's surface, showcasing her smooth and sexy limb before submerging it back into the bath. Anything involving call me daddy is a huge nope. Saying who's the good girl, suck it, or just being mouthy in general, and I'll bolt faster than a rabid dog, Nyan. What else? I also don't like it if they go straight for my kittens. And bad odor is a complete no-no. My nose is sensitive. Kittens? Kuroka decided to give him a more practical demonstration. She stood up, turned around, and sat facing him, her legs on either side of his, her world-class tush taking the shape of his strong thighs. With a playful grin, she pushed her chest into his face. Kittens. She reaffirmed as she pushed her chest into his face. Ah. Issei muttered sagely after her left his face, nodding as if he had received a profound revelation. Kittens. Kittens, kit and cat. Say hi, she giggled as she introduced her kitties, propping them up individually and clearly relishing the light-hearted exchange. Once the introduction was complete, she continued her explanation. Men are simple. They have one sensitive part, and they're happy with just that. Issei made a face that suggested he semi-agreed with her point, although he wasn't inclined to argue. Because, truth be told, it was somewhat accurate for him. Us girls have at least 7, Kuroka emphasized. Men go crazy over these. But the trick is to build up the excitement. Pouncing on them right off the bat just screams I am a virgin to me, Nyan. She traced a finger over his torso, following the faint outline of his chest muscle. You seem to know a lot about these, or do you even know about it, Nyan? Can you spell mine out, HM? Hint, I have 8, Nyan. A challenging, seductive, and playful look danced in Kuroka's narrowed amber eyes, accompanied by a teasing smile. She was testing him once again, pushing the boundaries of their playful exploration. Let's see, Issei began, his fingers lightly tracing a path from the top of her head, starting with her distinctive cat ears. Your ears. Okay, that counts as 1. Your lips and mouth. Issei's arms enveloped her body, and he gently tilted her head for a lingering kiss, his hands exploring as he continued. She sighed softly, their breasts merging as they breathed together, her hands finding their place on his shoulders. She encouraged him with a soft murmur, and his journey down her body continued, trailing kisses along her collarbone. Neck, he murmured against her skin, planting feather-light kisses that made her shiver. Kuroka playfully counted off, "That's 3." Her laughter was filled with anticipation as he ventured lower, leaving a series of red-blue marks on her otherwise spotless skin. Her grew louder with each touch and kiss. "The kittens," Issei whispered with a chuckle, his lips finding their way to her right breast. He traced a circle around her rosy pink rings with his tongue, then captured the hardened bud between his lips, teasing and nibbling. With his free hand, he expertly toyed with her other breast. Kuroka's grew more fervent, her need intensifying with every touch. She struggled to maintain her playful demeanor as he continued to explore her body, drawing her desire to the surface. And she shivered with as she felt his finger tracing a straight line down her spine, her own hand skillfully caressing his erect member. 5. He stopped suckling her to lock their lips a second time. Their lips locked in a passionate kiss, and Issei's wandering hand continued its descent, tracing the contours of Kuroka's smooth stomach. He teased her inner thighs with tantalizing rubs and playful pinches, eliciting soft, breathy from her. And in HM6 Kuroka rasped, her voice filled with desire, her breath coming in short gasps. She practically groaned into his mouth, overwhelmed by the sensations coursing through her body. As they briefly broke apart to catch their breath, her glazed golden amber eyes locked onto his dark chocolate ones, conveying her immense enjoyment of both their intimate activities and his skilled touch. "Since you're doing so great, I'll hand you a freebie," Kuroka purred as she sensually grasped his stiffening bulge. In one smooth, eager motion she slid him into her arousal making her slick and needy, her velvety walls greedily eating around him. MNNH. Tic-tac, huh? So I lied so you wouldn't get disappointed because of my average size, big deal, Issei managed to reply, his voice tinged with. Kuroka was a delightful combination of hot and incredibly wet, not to mention her charmingly roguish personality. "Lucky you, size don't matter when you know what to do with your NNGHH. A groan escaped her as she eased herself down, taking him to the hilt. She could feel him stretching her insides, and the tip of his shaft kissed deep in her. Issei winced once. The ing cat, her walls were dangerously snug and searing. "Motherer, tic-tac my ass," she hissed, her smirk managing to persist despite her breathless state, barely managing to contain her saliva from leaking out. "Ha ha, which reminds me, what's the last one I seen Ian?" "The tushies, of course," Issei confidently replied as he firmly gripped her voluptuous rear. With skillful guidance, he began to help her move up and down. Kuroka mewed in amusement and sexual leisure, rocking her hips as she gripped him in her searing hot grip. Enthusiasm was the greatest aphrodisiac, an often overlooked but essential ingredient in maintaining a lively sex life for any couple. The bathroom walls echoed with the sounds of water splashes and her passionate, Kuroka's, initially low and reserved, crescendoed into a chorus of ecstasy that overwhelmed Issei's occasional grunts. She was wholly immersed in the experience, relishing every sensation and letting her voice express her unabashed. "Ah. Me, I see. Right there, right there. F dash. Don't stop. I'm gonna." She slurred her words, her movements growing more fervent as she impaled herself on him. Her body tensed, and her voice grew louder, carrying the unmistakable signs of her impending climax. MMMNNGGHHHH. In response to her eating around him, Issei relinquished her, his hands firmly gripping her ass cheeks as he stood up. Kuroka clung to him, her body still trembling from her orgasm as he bent forward, thrusting deep and rough. NNGHAHOH. "I'm still coming, you ing brute, NNMHH, ah. Ah. And YHAH? Ah ha ha ha, you're turning me on. This is supposed to be the other way around, Kyon." As her grew more incoherent and salacious, her participation with her hips waned. She couldn't utter coherent words, and her sweet, playful had transformed into something altogether more primal and lustful. Her flushed face, matted black locks, and unfocused, glazed eyes painted a picture of an enraptured woman lost in the throes of passion. Her black locks matted on her small face that was flushing red, her eyes glazed and unable to focus on anything, blurred as her eyes could only stare at the ceiling without seeing. Her hot tongue lolled out of her lips as her sweltering breath bounced against his shoulder. She would hate herself for loving it this much if she could think straight. And she had no complaints about that, especially in her current state of blissful oblivion. Kuroka's world had condensed into pure sensation, each thrust sending shockwaves of coursing through her body. She could feel the relentless pounding, the relentless rhythm of their union, and it was driving her wild. Her became increasingly uninhibited, a symphony of unrestrained ecstasy that reverberated through the bathroom. Her voice grew louder and more vulgar, each impassioned cry turning Issei on further. Her once playful and teasing demeanor had transformed into a raw, primal expression of desire. As Issei continued to thrust into her with primal urgency, Kuroka's body reacted, her limbs quivering and her muscles contracting with each powerful stroke. Her nails dug into his back, leaving faint trails of reddened skin as her breathing became erratic. Kuroka's eyes, once filled with mischief and seduction, were now hazy, unfocused orbs of. Her tongue lolled out of her mouth as she gasped for air, her head tilting back to expose her neck, which bore the marks of Issei's earlier attention. She had lost herself completely in the whirlwind of sensation, and the world beyond the bathroom had faded into obscurity. All that existed in that moment was the relentless rhythm of their bodies colliding, the searing heat of their passion, and the intoxicating symphony of their shared desire. NNNKKHHH. As Kuroka approached the pinnacle of ecstasy, her body quivered with a violent intensity. Waves of surged through her, overwhelming her senses and causing her to shudder uncontrollably. Her reached a fevered pitch, merging into an almost primal scream of. And then, as the climax crashed over her like a tidal wave, Kuroka's world exploded into a blinding white light. Time seemed to stand still for a moment as she experienced an intense, mind-numbing release that left her breathless and utterly spent. For that brief moment, everything faded away, the bathroom, the world outside, even her own thoughts. All that remained was the overwhelming sensation of that washed over her in relentless waves. When her senses gradually returned, Kuroka found herself gasping for breath, her body drenched in sweat, and her limbs feeling like jelly. She blinked her eyes slowly, as if waking from a dream, and gradually became aware of the reality around her once more. Issei, who had been relentless in his pursuit of her, now held her close, his own ragged breaths mingling with hers. Kuroka's heart raced as she realized the intensity of the experience she had just shared with Issei. It was a wild, unbridled union that had left her utterly breathless and craving for more. And as her senses fully returned, she couldn't help but wear a satisfied, languid smile as she looked into Issei's eyes. "That was amazing, Issei-nyan," she purred, her voice husky and filled with post-orgasmic bliss. "You really know how to leave a girl satisfied." Issei couldn't help but grin in response, his own satisfaction evident in his eyes. "That'll be $20. "Oh, screw you," she giggled, and rewarded him with a quick kiss before nuzzling his neck. As they both caught their breath, the world outside the bathroom began to reassert itself, but in that moment, they were content to bask in the afterglow of their passionate encounter, their bodies entwined and their desires sated. Break. Having showered and dried themselves, the two rested peacefully on his ludicrously cozy bed. All lights off. All noises silent. Only soft, rhythmic breathing filled the room as they lay entwined, the world outside seemingly forgotten. Spent and satisfied, both the unaspiring demon lord and the happy-go-lucky Nekashu didn't take long to be wrapped in profound sleep the moment they hit the sack. However, as fate would have it, all good slumbers must eventually come to an end, and sometimes, the rude awakening was delivered without a hint of warning, much like an earthquake shaking one from a dream. The door to Issei's bedroom clicked open, and the intrusion of light and noise disrupted their peaceful reprieve. The outside glow parted the comforting darkness, creating a bridge of invasive light, allowing the noises and ramblings to invade like an annoying group of wasps. MRRH angry that she was slowly starting to wake, Kuroka shifted herself away from the door, her forehead brushing the back of his shirt. Framed in the doorway like a living portrait, Yoruichi animatedly drew in a gasp as she hooted, "Well, I'll be." Whoops. She began to speak but quickly realized the error of her ways and ducked just in time to avoid a swiftly thrown pillow from Kuroka. The pillow sailed harmlessly over Yoruichi's head and ended up smacking the pretty face of an unsuspecting Rias Gremory, who had apparently come to have a conversation with the demon lord. Rias recoiled slightly, not from any physical harm but more from the affront to her dignity. Akino couldn't help but let out an amused titter at the unexpected turn of events. "Hey, you could have hit someone with that." This remark earned her another pillow projectile from Kuroka, which she deftly dodged, only for the cushion to find its target in the form of Akino, who was struck squarely in the face. Rias couldn't help but smirk, her pride momentarily restored as Akino's laughter came to a sudden halt. However, Kuroka was not in the mood for further interruptions. Growling, she squirmed deeper into the protective cocoon of covers, partially shielding herself from the outside world. Her threat hung in the air as she grumbled, "Shut up. Go away or I'll skin you." Despite Kuroka's menacing warning, Yorichi wasn't one to back down when confronted. In fact, the threat seemed to amuse her even more, as if she relished the opportunity to get under someone's skin, especially when that someone appeared to be just as playful. Come on, Yorichi chuckled mischievously as she advanced into the room, her shadow elongating over the bed. You're sleeping next to him, and you think no one's gonna ask questions? Kuroka's golden eyes glared ominously from within her blanket cocoon, still emitting a dangerous glow. The others in the room, including Rias and Akino, had wisely taken cover behind the wall, ready to evade any potential pillow projectiles. Zest and Naruko remained close, unsure of whether to intervene or stay back. The maid stood worriedly, unsure if she should stop Yorichi because she was disturbing her master's rest or stay back because her master knew her personally. Maruko wasn't paying attention since she was staring at the half-dozen maids downstairs who were sifting the clothes the group just splurged at for free. For a brief moment, a surreal hush settled over the room. At first no one moved, their brains unable to make sense of the sudden alarm that punched through their chest, stopping them from doing whatever they were doing. The building remained still, but they felt the ground was collapsing beneath them and that the roof was falling. It was as if time itself had paused, and everyone felt an inexplicable sense of impending doom. The atmosphere grew heavy, and their own thoughts seemed to turn against them. It was as though a malevolent force was squeezing their chests, making it difficult to breathe. Their voices, trapped in their throats, refused to emerge. As the oppressive silence persisted, it felt as though gravity had intensified, bearing down on everyone in the room. Each person, other than Kuroka, Yorichi, and Naruko, found themselves succumbing to an invisible force, their bodies involuntarily slumping to their knees. Panic and dread gripped their minds, rendering them helpless in the face of an inexplicable terror. Desperation compelled them to claw at their own necks, as if trying to break free from an unseen stranglehold. The overwhelming sense of impending doom hung over them like a suffocating shroud. Dread, dread, dread. They felt trapped, with the instinct to flee, overwhelmed by an overwhelming fear that something terrible was imminent. Their thoughts grew increasingly irrational, and the only option that seemed to present itself was the unthinkable, ending their own lives before whatever malevolent force awaited them could do so. Just as it seemed they were teetering on the precipice of succumbing to their irrational fears, Issei abruptly woke up. The nightmarish grip on their minds and bodies dissipated as swiftly as it had descended. The room reverted to its normal state, and the weight of dread was lifted. Trembling and disoriented, the others took gasping breaths, their hearts pounding in their chests. They exchanged bewildered glances, grappling with the lingering effects of the bizarre phenomenon they had just experienced. Several maids remained on the floor, tears in their eyes, torn between their desire to escape the penthouse and their duty to prioritize their master's well-being. Oh man, Yorichi cooed, lightly smacking her own head. The Dread Lordling wasn't quite at the Dread Empress level of spreading terror yet, but he certainly was getting there. Way to go, little Don. You nearly got everyone to suffocate themselves. With a disheveled appearance and a mess of brown hair, Issei managed a sleepy and exasperated scowl in response. His voice, rougher and deeper upon waking, conveyed his irritation. Did I now? He croaked. Do you know that when someone's sleeping, they usually want to stay asleep? Yorichi, ever playful, merely shrugged in response to his less than enthusiastic greeting. Issei groaned audibly as he rubbed his face and scratched his head, attempting to shake off the remnants of sleep. As he stirred, he noticed a peculiar sensation tugging at his leg. To his bemusement, he found that Kuroka had latched onto his leg as if surrounded by a pack of menacing pit bulls. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. What was that? She demanded, her voice trembling with apprehension. Her tails were stiffly coiled between her legs, tucked underneath a black hoodie she had borrowed, and pressed flat against her stomach. She clung to his leg for dear life, her grip surprisingly strong for someone of her size. Nyan. Sorry, that was me, he confessed, sounding more like he was admitting to letting out a fart. Wasn't my intention. I tried to keep it in, I swear, but when I'm half asleep, I don't really care. He paused for a moment, realizing the unintentional rhyme in his sentence, and sniggered at the absurdity of it. Kuroka's eyes narrowed as she clung to him, still clearly shaken by the unexpected scare. Holy shit, she muttered, her tails gradually loosening their rigid grip on his leg and curling away to their usual position. She remained firmly attached to him, like a terrified koala. Or woman-sized cat. That scared the crap out of me. The heck was that? The heck are you? I'm often called the Baba Yaga. A lie. People had called him many things from the Pervminator to movie junkie, but no one had ever called him that. Now get off my leg, done wanna. I'm scared. Kuroka hugged him, making him wince, almost in pain. No, seriously. You're cute and all, but feck off from my leg. Kuroka, however, was not easily fooled. Her eyes transitioned from wonder and confusion to a narrowed, scrutinizing gaze. She quickly deduced what he was trying to hide behind his faux nonchalance. Issei's leg had fallen asleep, and he was now at her mercy. With a wicked glint in her eyes and a smirk that appeared in an instant, Kuroka realized she had the upper hand. Issei, who had always been in control, suddenly found himself in a vulnerable position. He could only watch with a sense of impending dread as Kuroka eased her grip on his leg, and the taste of helplessness washed over him. No, Kuroka, don't. Let's talk about this. Argh. Issei's pleas and agonized cries fell on deaf ears as Kuroka continued her merciless assault on his asleep leg. The tingling sensation escalated to a crescendo of pins and needles, and he howled in a mix of pain and frustration. She nuzzled his thigh with her chin, thoroughly enjoying her newfound advantage. Stop! Stop! Issei's futile attempts to fend off Kuroka with a pillow only elicited a playful giggle from her, as she clung to his leg like a determined octopus. Bananas! Bananas! Bananas? Yorichi raised an eyebrow, momentarily puzzled. She then glanced at Kuroka, who seemed to be fully engrossed in tormenting Issei. After a brief moment of contemplation, Yorichi couldn't help but smirk knowingly. TSK, is this why you didn't want to come shopping with us girls? So you get to have uninterrupted physical closeness with the cat? Cheeky little bastard, ain't ya? Issei's protests continued, his legs suffering beneath Kuroka's relentless assault. He issued a vague threat about Cerberuses, but it had an unexpected effect. Instead of intimidating Kuroka, it sent Yorichi shuddering with memories of her own encounters with those three uncontrollable beasts. Hand on their heads, both Rias and Aquino slowly rose to their feet, steadying themselves against the door frame. The panic that had gripped their hearts was gradually subsiding, replaced by a sense of bewilderment as they stared at Issei, then exchanged uncertain glances with each other. Aquino didn't need words to understand what Rias was thinking. The predatory gleam in her eyes spoke volumes. Issei was undeniably dangerous, and Rias was now determined to have him in her peerage. The only lingering question was how to make it happen. This was a puzzle they were eager to solve, and the pieces were starting to fall into place. In spite of his situation, Issei managed to yell out, "Close the damn door! Break!" Sona Citri's frown deepened as she stared at the holographic display screen before her. She had been analyzing the same clip repeatedly, rewinding it again and again, but it provided no further insights. The scene played out with frustrating predictability, ending abruptly as Coriana Andriolphus collapsed onto the arena floor, her screams of terror echoing in the chamber. What had caused this sudden and inexplicable reaction? There were no discernible shifts in demonic power or mana, no magical fluctuations or signatures that would have indicated an attack or spell casting. All illusion spells should have left traces of magical essence in the form of colored particles, emitted from the caster's eyes and enhanced by the Grigori Research Institute's technology. Yet, there was no such evidence in the footage. Sona watched as the red particles of demonic power seemed to approach Issei, only to dissipate as if they had struck an invisible barrier. They didn't deflect, bounce off, or change course, they simply ceased to exist. It was as though Issei had done something to Coriana's power, causing it to behave in this peculiar manner. Frustration mounting, Sona leaned back in her office chair, removed her glasses, and rubbed her tired eyes, exhaling a long sigh. "It's getting late," a voice interrupted her thoughts. Sona turned her head to see a young woman with wavy blonde hair approaching, carrying a steaming cup of tea. "Don't you think you should call it a day, President?" "Thank you, Claudia," Sona replied, her tension momentarily easing at the sight of the comforting chamomile tea. "I'm almost finished." Even though the vice president has left?" Claudia Enfield's voice held a playful note as she spoke. The secretary of the Student Executive Board bore a striking resemblance to Aquino, with her violet eyes, polite demeanor, and seemingly pleasant attitude, which masked hidden vulnerabilities. Sona found the similarities between Claudia and Aquino unsettling in many ways. Her violet eyes returned to the holographic display, showing a smirking hi to Issei. Claudia tilted her head, her smile still in place. "He's a unique case, isn't he?" Sona held a deep breath, exhaling just as deeply. Sona took a deep breath before responding, her frustration evident. "Yes, unique." Though she privately believed the term irritating was a more apt descriptor. As a noble of House Citri, Sona had encountered her fair share of people she considered irritating. However, Issei was in a league of his own. Instead of retreating in shame or succumbing to emotional outbursts when labeled a nuisance, he maintained a maddening calmness and responded with biting sarcasm. He wore his words like impenetrable armor, and a devastating weapon all at once. And that, more than anything else, infuriated her. "To have you obsess over him, Fufu, What a peculiar man, Claudia remarked with an amused lilt to her voice. Indeed, Sona admitted, letting out another sigh. It seemed that sighing had become an involuntary response whenever Issei was the subject of conversation. He was proving to be even more of a sigh-inducer than her own doting sister. The Citri heiress had been meticulously observing Issei since the first day of his arrival, hoping to uncover something extraordinary about him. She had thought that being in a new environment, no longer a student of an ordinary high school, might provoke a different side of him. The unexpected encounter with Reiser had provided an opportunity for a remarkable reaction, but Issei had remained unfazed. Issei continued with his usual routines, displaying his standard nonchalant and carefree attitude. It didn't help that he often kept to his dorm room instead of spending his free time outside like most other students. Lucifash valued its students' privacy, to a degree, so Sona couldn't observe him within his dorm room. The fact that not even Rias had managed to find anything despite being under the same floor was an even bigger letdown. Sona couldn't have hidden anything from Rias without her noticing, and the Gremory heiress's genuine disappointment over the past 4 days was evident. Why don't you arrange for Saji to fight him in the exam? Claudia suggested casually. Or anyone for that matter. He knows all of them personally. He knows we're in the student board, Sona reiterated with a weary tone, her sighs becoming all the more frequent in the presence of Issei. I can't risk him antagonizing the SEB. Claudia, seemingly indifferent to the reputation of the student executive board, persisted with her suggestion. Why not? Do you intend to recruit him? Sona hesitated for a moment, then let out another sigh, signaling her internal struggle. Well, I know. Sona's competitive nature with Rias was no secret. If Rias miraculously managed to recruit Issei into her peerage, it would put Sona at a severe disadvantage. None of the members in her peerage could handle Issei without his power. Just his words alone could debilitate Saji and provoke any member of her peerage to abandon their common sense and attack him recklessly. Despite her reservations about Issei's character, Sona couldn't deny his intelligence and quick-wittedness. He had a knack for drawing good-natured people to him, evident in the growing circle of friends he had acquired in just a matter of hours. Gathering 3 of the most promising freshman students so quickly required a certain charisma. But even considering all of this, Sona's answer remained firm. No, Sona shook her head, her flat bangs swaying gently. Rank and file is important. He wields great power, there's no doubt about that. However, having him join us would bring several problems. Chief among them was the demoralization of weaker members, a scenario Sona was determined to prevent. Competitiveness is important, but if my servants have to compete with him knowing they can never catch up to his strength, it would only diminish their spirits. Claudia hummed thoughtfully, twirling her wavy hair with her fingers. Is he really that strong? She wondered aloud. His mother's intensity is beyond questioning, as I'm certain, but did he fully inherit it? Some apples may fall further from the tree, in some unique cases. True, Sona acknowledged, considering the example of Serorg. With his calm temperament, nobody would have expected he was Lord Bale's son. If Lord Bale was a tidal wave, Serorg was the breakwater that broke it apart, remaining stolid and resolute. Issei, on the other hand, seemed to fully embrace his mother's intensity. He managed to defeat Andreophis in seconds. To believe his victory was pure luck is flat-out ignorant and insipid. Well then, I suppose many of his classmates are ignorant and insipid, Claudia commented with a light titter. They are, Sona affirmed, well aware of the arrogance that permeated the school. I can't believe I'm saying this, but he and his band of misfits are a breath of fresh air in this academy filled with narcissists and elitists. If only he could be more cooperative. Everyone likes an aloof rebel with a good-natured heart, not in a place where standards are held high. The flummoxed president of the student executive board drew another sigh, begrudgingly staring at the face of the aforementioned rebel on her holographic display. Then she paused, and stared at her secretary. I'm sorry, good-natured? Claudia gave Sona a quirky shrug. He's rough on the outside, but I have an inkling he's a good person at heart. She giggled softly. If he isn't, I would have known. Takes one to know one, no? Again with your self-deprecating jests, Sona remarked, shaking her head. She couldn't quite understand why these sassy people seemed to enjoy belittling themselves as a source of humor. Were they secretly masochists? Sona decided she'd rather not know. But we're getting sidetracked, she added with another sigh. The past few hours had seen an unusual number of sighs from the usually composed student executive board president. What I don't want is him joining Rias. Claudia was like Aquino or Aquino was like Claudia. Sona wasn't sure. She had only known the secretive secretary of hers for a year. Regardless of that, the two were quick to piece things together. So you want him to show his strength, because if the whole world knows of his capability, she'll have a rougher time recruiting him. Claudia curled an impish smile. Oh, my president, I wouldn't have expected for you to be this petty. HRK, that threw her off her stride. Sona was momentarily taken aback by the comment, feeling a twinge of guilt. It is petty, I admit, but it won't matter if he keeps using the same mind trick for the remainder of the exam. I may have an idea for that, President, Claudia said with a hint of intrigue, enjoying the fact that she had Sona's full attention. I doubt it's something you'd like to hear, for I am dark and foreboding and oftentimes a tad bit twisted. Sona couldn't help but roll her eyes at Claudia's dramatic tone. Cut it out with your jest, I'm all out of options. Go ahead. Let's hear your twisted idea. Well, with a serene smile, Claudia began to outline her plan. It first involves a tiny bit of match fixing and a cat with a pardoned criminal record. Break. Issei didn't feel so good. He had enjoyed a restful night's sleep, free from any feline-related nightmares or cat-claw ambushes. Waking up with a clear head, he found Kuroka snoozing contentedly beside him. She had opted for an extended stay in his apartment, attributing it to the lavish comfort of his bed. Issei didn't mind the surprise sleepover at all. After all, Kuroka was a lively companion who could effortlessly switch between teasing Zest and persuading the bashful maid to join them. Witnessing Kuroka's discovery of Zest's horn erogenous zones had been a spectacle to behold. The resulting from Zest had been an unexpected auditory treat that had added an extra layer of amusement to their morning. Issei briefly contemplated the day ahead. They were well sated from their previous night's escapades, which meant they couldn't embark on another round of teasing the demon maid. Not to mention that their slumber had been disrupted earlier when Yoruchi had made her unannounced entrance. Speaking of his demonic personal assistant, Zest had evidently risen early. He assumed she was probably downstairs preparing breakfast for both him and the gigantic cat by his side. All in all, his day started much like the previous ones at this upscale academy, except for the addition of Kuroka to his bed. However, a peculiar sensation gnawed at his chest, an unsettling feeling, akin to mild nausea without the urge to vomit. Tossing a bare leg over his thigh, the Nekisha mumbled slurred words once he sat up to rub his face. Amaramem shiro enim nya. Issei furrowed his brow, wondering whether she was murmuring a name or simply the Japanese word for white. Munya. Baninyas? Suppressing his laughter, Issei couldn't help but find her incoherent muttering endearing, a welcome diversion from his earlier sense of unease. There are a few things in life that should not be messed with without a good reason, parents, unless they're total jerks. High-voltage AC transmitter towers, the Dread Empress's chocolate pudding, and a laid-back individual who prefers avoiding confrontation, keeping a low profile, and hiding their emotions like a squirrel stashing nuts for winter. But never, ever underestimate the determination of someone who won't back down until their opponents are squashed beneath their Adidas running shoes. Issei might have inherited some of his mother's ruthless pragmatism, but he also despised losing in a competition that had values more significant than mere bragging rights. Losing an online game? Sure, he'd rage, claim the game was rigged, cool off in a few hours, and then dive right back in, addicted as ever. But losing a game that had real-life consequences? That was an entirely different story. Welp! Kuroka chimed in a nonchalant tone, stretching her arms as if she were about to embark on a leisurely stroll. Looks like it's you and me, I see Naya. Don't expect me to take it easy on you. Serorg and Ingvild exchanged uneasy glances, well aware that Kuroka was oblivious to Issei's true lineage. They couldn't help but feel apprehensive about pitting their de facto leader against his close friend, especially since the outcome of this match could strain their friendship. While it was a remote possibility, they couldn't ignore it. Issei, on the other hand, had that distant, contemplative look in his eyes that signaled he was in full strategist mode. How convenient it was for him to draw Kuroka as his opponent the very next day. He'd chalk it up to bad luck if he didn't know better. They could have easily paired him with Serorg or Ingvild, but they deliberately chose Kuroka. Their reasoning was crystal clear. Serorg might not withstand Issei's psychological tactics, and Ingvild would undoubtedly hesitate against hitting him. Kuroka, with her natural talent, posed a challenge Issei couldn't easily exploit with his nightmare abilities. Any other examinee, and Issei would have unleashed a flurry of magical tricks. But with Kuroka, he'd need to rely on his wits alone. So it seemed they were determined to play dirty, bending the rules without leaving a trace of their hands in the dirt. Well, being in a position of authority did grant them certain privileges. Issei had no concrete evidence, and he wasn't about to waste his entire day nursing a grudge. After all, this was just a game, and Issei had no intentions of losing or playing by their rules. Hey, Kuroka. The Nekisha paused mid-step as she was about to leave their table, her tail flicking in mild curiosity. I'm still not gonna take it easy on you, Naya. No hard feelings. Issei leaned in a bit closer, a mischievous glint in his eyes. You ever feel like being a rebel? A pretty blue bullet of concentrated senjutsu aura hit the middle of his forehead like a rubber bullet, equally as painful, minus the bounce. It was as if the universe had decided to gift Issei with an impromptu lesson in gravitational theory by making him experience a sudden and undeniable attraction to the ground. Or I die. With a graceless thud, Issei descended to the arena's lukewarm, smooth surface, gazing up at the brilliant, hellish skies. He lay there for a moment, feeling like a fallen angel who had decided to take an unscheduled pit stop. After a good 5 seconds of awkward silence, nearly 10,000 spectators unleashed a cacophony of boos, jeers, and complaints, as if their collective disappointment had given birth to a choir of disgruntlement. Issei, lying prone on the ground, chose to ignore the uproar. The audience could unleash their vocal fury all they wanted. He had other priorities at the moment, such as contemplating the meaning of life, the universe, and everything from the vantage point of the arena floor. However, one voice cut through the tumult like a melodious dagger. It was Kuroka, who seemed utterly nonchalant about the resounding jeers that filled the entire stadium. Naya, I don't think they're buying it, she remarked, her voice carrying a playful undertone. Yeah, no shit, Issei muttered, shifting his head to look at the approaching Nekasha. She moved with a casual grace that seemed to defy the chaos around them, choosing to sit on his stomach as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Just let me hurt you already. Hell no. It'll be quick and painless, Naya. Hell no.